Chapter 2246. For some reason, Gu Duxing, who was thousands of miles away, shuddered. His powerful spiritual sense clearly sensed that he was being locked onto by someone. No matter what he did, this person could see it. Who exactly was this person? Gu Duxing broke out in cold sweat. He used all the methods he could and couldn't, and changed the methods he shouldn't have used. He just wanted to get rid of this feeling, but he couldn't get rid of it in the end. From beginning to end, as long as he moved a little, he would be hunted down by a strong enemy. In the end, Gu Duxing no longer used his own methods. He started to use Chu Yang's, Ji Mo's, Luo Kadi's and Ao Xian's methods. In fact, he even tried all the methods that Mo Tianji had mentioned before. But Gu Duxing was soon disappointed. He almost lost all hope. No matter what method he used, it was useless. No matter what he did, the enemy could accurately predict what he would do next. In fact, he couldn't even escape from the enemy's calculations right from the start. This extremely terrible feeling made Gu Duxing feel like cursing. What the fuck are you? Are you a fucking roundworm in my stomach? Why is it that every time I change directions at the last minute, there's always someone waiting for me? How can I live through this day? For example, when I wholeheartedly go west and reach a fork in the road, I suddenly decide to go south. In the end, there's still someone waiting for me there. He even keeps on laughing. This information is really amazing. This guy actually went this way. Haha. Every time Gu Duxing heard this, he wanted to kill someone. What kind of a B***** could come up with such information? This B** is even more perverted than Mo Tianji. When I find Mo Tianji, I'll definitely provoke him to spar with this B** and see who's more perverted. Obviously, Gu Duxing's understanding of Mo Tianji was still at the level of the heavenly imperial court for the time being. However, he neglected the fact that he himself was now a saint. How could Mo Tianji remain at the same level? Therefore, Mo Tianji, who was originally abnormal, naturally became even more abnormal now. Bang bang! Bang! A man in purple was kicked to the ground by Gu Duxing. Before he could even react, Gu Duxing, who was covered in wounds, had already pounced on him like a mountain. Gu Duxing immediately locked onto his divine sense, then controlled his body's mobility, sealed his dantian, and took control of his mind and spirit. Then, a slap landed on his face. Gu Duxing asked fiercely, "Speak! Where did you get the news about me? Tell me!" This person was quite strong-willed. His life was in someone else's hands, and his tone was quite aggressive. "Why should I tell you? Hee, kill me if you have the guts. I won't kill you if you tell me." Gu Duxing had no choice but to compromise first. The first few had all died in this way. They would rather die than say anything. This was a matter of the backbone and face of a high-level expert. The more you force him to say it, the more he won't say it. He would rather die than submit. Generally speaking, when one's cultivation reached such a level, how many of them were spineless? "If I tell you, you won't kill me?" The man's eyes lit up and he asked, "Do you mean what you say?" Who would have thought that this killing god would actually be so easy to talk to? In the past, no one who had fallen into his hands had survived. A word spoken cannot be taken back. "I will never go back on my words." Gu Duxing was furious. "You dare to not believe me? Yes, this way, we have an exchange of conditions. It's not that I'm being threatened by you, right?" This person actually didn't give in at all. "Yes, that's what I mean." "All right then. Let me go first, then we'll talk. I won't run away. You have to keep your word. I'm not someone who goes back on my words." "That's not a problem." After a round of exchange of conditions, Gu Duxing finally knew that his information had been obtained by a currently famous and huge intelligence organization. This intelligence organization seemed to have a huge intelligence network. They had collected all of his battle information, all of his personality, and all of his habits. Then, they summarized and analyzed everything. After the analysis was done, they began to sell it wantonly. Currently, Just by selling information related to him, they had earned at least several million purple cloud coins. And this number was just a few days ago. Just by selling information about Gu Duxing alone, this organization had already earned a lot of money. What kind of fucking intelligence organization is this? They actually use it to make money. Gu Duxing was so angry that he couldn't take it anymore. They framed me while selling my information. While I was running away like a dog, they were counting the money loudly? There's actually such a thing in this world. What kind of weirdo could come up with such a wicked idea? They're really more perverted than Mo Tianji. Gu Duxing finally couldn't take it anymore and cursed. Oh right, what's the name of this organization? Before the man left, Gu Duxing finally asked this question. When he asked this question, the man had already turned around and walked a few hundred feet away. He stood at a corner. Gu Duxing stood there and asked, not chasing after him. The name of this organization is called Tianji Intelligence Department. The purple-clothed man took a deep breath. He turned around and looked at Gu Duxing. Thank you for not killing me this time. If you can escape from this disaster, I will go to your heavenly armament pavilion and create a great undertaking together with you. I've received your kindness and will withdraw from this pursuit. Take care. After he finished speaking, he cupped his hands and left. Watching this saint-level expert leave, Gu Duxing fell into a daze. Tianji Intelligence Department? Tianji? Perhaps ordinary people might not have any reaction to these words, but as Brother Jie, how could Gu Duxing not have any reaction? Could it be that this intelligence organization was created by that bastard Mo Tianji? Is it possible? It's impossible, right? Why would he deal with me? Something's not right about this. Gu Duxing frowned. At first, he denied it, then he wasn't sure. Could it be that black-hearted and goddamn Mo Tianji's doing? Otherwise, who could be so familiar with my character and temper? Who could be so familiar with Brother Jie's methods? Leaving me with no path to heaven and no door to hell. Although there are many capable people in this world, there are not many who can make me, Gu Duxing, so embarrassed. But if it's really Mo Tianji, then this guy is too inhumane. Is there a need to play me like this? He really wants to play me to death. Gu Duxing thought for less than a quarter of an hour before he once again embarked on the journey of escape. It wasn't that he didn't want to continue thinking, but because there were already many people surrounding him from all directions. The current Gu Duxing was like a super big meat pie. Everyone wanted to eat it, even though this meat pie was actually poisonous, and could poison anyone to death. Waha, he's really still here. But why is this guy in a daze? Why did the intelligence say that he would definitely be in a daze? Is he deliberately cooperating with that intelligence? Many people cheered and laughed, flying over as if they had found a mountain of gold. To think that the Tianji Intelligence Department had even predicted this. Mo Tianji! You damned perverted bastard! Gu Duxing roared with grief and indignation. I'm going to fuck you #yen %yen%. As he cursed, he ran for his life. After that, he was surrounded 4 or 5 times in a row. Gu Duxing could finally confirm that the person who sold him the intelligence behind the scenes was definitely Mo Tianji himself. This point was already confirmed without a doubt. Because at that time, he had already fallen into a situation of certain death, with no possibility of turning the situation around. However, it was a rare mistake in the intelligence that misled all the pursuers, allowing him to break out of the encirclement from all directions. However, he met his opponents again in waves. If it wasn't for that error in the intelligence, he would definitely have been intercepted and killed there. There was absolutely no chance of any fluke. Although the intelligence was extremely accurate, no one could say that they didn't catch up with Gu Duxing. But there was almost no real danger of life and death. In fact, in order to find out if this intelligence department was Mo Tianji, Gu Duxing even purposely put himself in a desperate situation. As expected, that intelligence misled him again, leaving him with a chance of survival. Driven by such accurate intelligence, Gu Duxing actually felt more and more in his heart. Why is it as if these people were sent by Mo Tianji to practice his swordplay? However, even with such a realization, Gu Duxing still didn't dare to be the least bit careless. Mo Tianji might let him off, but these people chasing after him definitely wouldn't show him any mercy. His life would be in danger at every turn. Just the slightest bit of carelessness could cause him to lose his life here. This game is really not fun. Gu Duxing was running away. His heart was full of tears. Mo Tianji, you damn perverted bastard! Hurry up and leave. If you don't leave, I will really be played to death by you. Although he said that, Gu Duxing also knew that if he didn't make another breakthrough, this game would definitely not end. Because Mo Tianji wouldn't allow it to end like this. The conclusion was that he could only continue to be hunted down according to the script written by Mo Tianji. If he wanted this game to end, there could only be two results. First, Mo Tianji would make a miscalculation and he would die under the siege. As for the second, that was if he finally succeeded in breaking through and stabilizing his realm, he would become so strong that no one would dare to chase after him. And to achieve such an effect, his cultivation would have to at least reach the peak of the saint level. And he was still a very, 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 very far away from that step. This meant that before he reached that goal, he was destined to be hunted down and unable to avoid it. He could only passively earn money for Mo Tianji and continue to earn money like this. This conclusion made Gu Duxing burst into tears. It was too much of a scam. Chapter 2247. Gu Duxing estimated that by the time he finally ended his escape, that goddamn perverted bastard Mo Tianji would at least be able to earn a few 100 million purple cloud coins while he was being chased. Or even more. That goddamn perverted bastard. This is too ruthless, isn't it? Gu Duxing cursed in his heart as he fled. I've never seen anything like this. You should at least leave me some time to relieve myself. Ever since I was noticed by you, I basically don't even have the time to relieve myself. Therefore, Mo Tianji gave out more and more information without anyone knowing about it. And the information became more and more concentrated. And the price of the information also rose accordingly. And it became more and more expensive. However, more and more people bought it. And there was an endless stream of them. As a result, the Fekta Intelligence Department became more and more powerful. Their reputation spread far and wide, and they became more and more reliable. I sold the information to you, right? My information was right? My analysis was right? Gu Duxing was indeed there, right? That's right? He did say those words and did those actions. That's all right? Since that's all right, then with so many advantages, if you still can't kill Gu Duxing, then that's a problem with your own strength. Does that have anything to do with my information? Of course, basically no one questioned Tianji Intelligence Department. Once they went and were questioned in return, other than showing their incompetence, and that they were a super idiot, what else could it mean? With such accurate information, you can't even kill Gu Duxing. What? Can. Say. What? Do. Therefore, under the premise that the people of both heavens and earth were kept in the dark, no one knew that this pursuit had already changed from the route one day. This seemingly absurd but actually very strange pursuit had already quietly turned into Gu Duxing's personal sword training journey on that day. Gu Duxing's road to improvement. The road to the peak. Of course, this business also created Mo Tianji's money-making journey. He could make as much money as he wanted from private banks. Of course, the Tianji Intelligence Department had also been expanding without a sound during this pursuit. In just a few short months, they bloomed all over the Daluo heaven. Moreover, there was still a large surplus of purple coins. Therefore, it was really hard to say whether it was Mo Tianji who had fulfilled Gu Duxing's wish or Gu Duxing who had fulfilled Mo Tianji's wish. It was rather strange. In short, Gu Duxing realized that he didn't know when, but he had already become the target of Mo Tianji's manipulation. He had also become the mastermind and executor of the conspiracy. Furthermore, No matter what he did, he couldn't get rid of the fact that he was collecting money for Motianji and becoming Motianji's accomplice. Even if he agreed, no one else would. Who wouldn't want the cloudy heaven sword art? Furthermore, the most ridiculous thing was, Old man is obviously a victim. Gu Duxing looked up to the sky and sighed. His heart was tangled. Tens of thousands of miles away, Mo Tianji sat in the hand of Tianji. His face was full of an enigmatic smile. Second brother Gu, you should be very grateful to me. This kind of life and death experience, with all the experts in the world being your practice, is like a whip, lashing you forward. You have no choice but to improve. Haha, furthermore, I'm here to help you control everything. Although it's a bit far away and there will be some omissions, if you can't even handle those, what kind of brother Jia are you? Mo Tianji looked at the densely packed information in front of him and smiled sinisterly. Now, all the other people's information had been handed over to others to handle. Mo Tianji was going all out to blow Gu Duxing to the peak. Even if you're just a pig, I'll blow you to the heavens. Mo Tianji smiled sinisterly. It's a pity that the others don't have such an opportunity. If they were all whipped together like this, how satisfying would it be? After thinking for a while, he suddenly frowned. If I were to frame them myself, and then cause a dispute, that's also a good idea. In Mo Tianji's secret chamber, a smug and lascivious laughter suddenly rang out. Outside, Mo Tianji's trusted subordinates felt a chill run down their spines. They couldn't help but shudder. Whenever boss laughs like this, someone is bound to be unlucky. I wonder who will be the unlucky one this time? In the Daliao heaven, Gu Duxing fled from west to east, from east to north, from north to west, from west to south. He fought and killed along the way. Since this time, Gu Duxing had thoroughly established his lofty status of being invincible with one sword. The lonely swordsman, Gu Duxing, fought and killed along the way. He remained undefeated despite thousands of dangers and tribulations. He galloped freely in the Daliao Heaven Imperial Court. After this pursuit, if he heard anyone say I've been through hundreds of battles in my life, Gu Duxing would definitely snort disdainfully. You've been through hundreds of battles in your life? That's nothing. I've been through no less than tens of thousands of battles in just 4 months. Motherfucker, I've been through hundreds of battles every single day. That's not even a single fucking day. You've been through hundreds of battles in your life, and you still have the nerve to brag in front of me? This pursuit was still ongoing. Over at Demon Emperor Heaven's side, Chu Yang had already started to train his troops. After 4 months of continuous selection, in the second month, Chu Yang very logically displayed the Heavenly Soldier banner. Of course, it was the flag of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He officially started to recruit those experts who had passed the selection. For this, Chu Yang specially occupied all the mountains outside Luohua City and used them as the headquarters of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Outside the mountains, he opened up countless training grounds and set up countless military camps. Every day, those who passed the selection would enter the military camps like flowing water. No one had any objections to this. Because the ultimate purpose of their arrival was ultimately to fight the extraterrestrial demons and eliminate the extraterrestrial demons. Heavenly soldiers fighting the extraterrestrial demons was a matter of course and appropriate. It was a tit for tat. It was a perfect combination. Some people exclaimed in admiration. The name Heavenly Armament Pavilion was really too reasonable. As for the training of the troops, it was even more needless to explain. Since they were going to war, they naturally had to train their familiarity with each other, tacit understanding, cooperation, and even various skills such as charging in battle formations. No matter how strong your individual combat power was, it might not be able to play a big role in the ever-changing battlefield. Of course, unless you were a super expert like DE. Of course, there were exceptions. The people who originally belonged to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion were scattered and assigned to various military camps as instructors. Of course, these instructors were not so easy to be. Except for a small number of them, the rest of the soldiers were all higher in cultivation than the instructors. This reality made the instructors sullen to death. In addition to training the recruits, they also had to further train their own level. No matter what, their status could not be that low, right? If a dignified instructor could be beaten up by a random recruit, then there was no need to live. However, reality was so cruel, so they had to work hard to change the situation. In particular, the Chrysanthemum Saber King, Li Guanyu, after being recruited, also took the title of Demon-Slaying Saber King in advance. He brought his people into the Heavenly Armament Pavilion in a grandiose manner. As soon as he entered, he displayed extraordinary strength. Chu Yang was very surprised to find that this person was not only a master of saber arts, but also a master of military strategy, tactical arrangements, planning, and so on. Handing over a team to him, there was no need to worry at all. At most, he just had to send a few more instructors over and everything would be fine. Talent, Chu Yang sighed from the bottom of his heart. If it was not to kill the extraterrestrial demons and eliminate the extraterrestrial demons, how could such a talent be willing to submit to others? Seeing that everything was going on the right track one by one. At this point, Chu Yang could be said to be greatly relieved. Now that everything was on the right track and the hundreds of millions of purple cloud coins had been spent, it was rare for Minister Chu to have some free time. Suddenly, he was filled with lust. This afternoon, he found Tai Batian and Wu Qianqian and winked at them to accompany him back. He said that he wanted to discuss some issues regarding the future development of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Xi Xieching, who was at the side, couldn't help but twitch her mouth. This pervert, with a lewd look on his face, he looked like a pig whose brain was filled with sperm. Did he really think that everyone was so stupid that they couldn't tell? Wu Qianqian and Tai Batian, who were also aware of it, couldn't help but blush to their necks. They scolded angrily. "Get lost!" Minister Chu was shameless. He smiled and said, "We haven't had a meeting for more than a month. Let's have a meeting today." At the side, Bai Shixian said innocently, "The meeting is serious business. Sisters, you should go quickly." At the side, there was a burst of laughter. Tai Batian and Wu Qianqian were too ashamed to show their faces. They grabbed Chu Yang and gave him a beating. Then, they sternly declared that they were not going back, definitely not going back. Minister Chu hung his head dejectedly, and left with his tail between his legs. During this period of time, Chu Yang also felt that his foundation for the saint-level cultivation had become much more solid. He was fully equipped with the strength to break through to a higher level. At present, the only thing he needed to prepare was to relax his body and mind. Then, he could start to try to break through. He didn't expect Tai Batian and Wu Qianqian to be so resolute, and reject him without hesitation. Minister Chu went back gloomily. He thought to himself, "Why don't I go and have a drink with the Tang clan's third young master, Yao Ningning and Tan Tan? Relax my mood?" Those two idiots had disappeared ever since they started working. Occasionally, when they saw Chu Yang, they would run as far away as possible. They hated Chu Yang so much that his teeth itched. Now, he finally found a chance to teach them a lesson. Otherwise, if he didn't teach them a lesson for 3 days, they would become unruly. However, when he was walking on the road, Chu Yang unexpectedly saw someone. This person had made all the hairs on Chu Yang's body stand on end. Tonight, the second lucky draw will be held at Weixin Public. From now on, everyone can leave a message. If you haven't followed my public Weixin, please turn on your phone and search for Wind Soaring the World. Chapter 2248. Ever since his rebirth, Chu Yang had developed a very special habit. As long as he was walking on the road, although he looked as if he was looking straight ahead and was simply walking on his own path, his divine sense had already enveloped a certain area around him. There was no exception. And this area had gradually increased along with the growth of his cultivation. Now, this area had already reached a radius of 5,000 feet. A radius of 5,000 feet. A radius of 5,000 feet. In the Heaven Imperial Court, this detection area was basically the limit of a beginner saint-level expert's detection area. And the periphery would more or less be overlooked. This kind of long-distance divine sense detection had to be constantly released for a long period of time, and it had to be released at any time, anywhere, all day long. For ordinary experts, even saint-level experts, this was a very extravagant move. But for Chu Yang, this was just a starting point. It was nothing more than the most basic range of defense. Since his rebirth, more than 70% of Chu Yang's time had been spent fighting with the enemy. This kind of constant probing with his divine sense had almost become an instinctive defense mechanism. Especially now that he had to face an entire world of enemies, he naturally had to be more careful. Secondly, Chu Yang's current divine sense strength was more than 10 times that of people of the same level. This kind of consumption was not too much of a burden to deal with. To be honest, a radius of 5,000 feet did not seem small. But if he really had to face a high-level saint, this distance was at most enough for Chu Yang to barely avoid being hit in his vital parts. It was inevitable that he would be injured. Since this detection area was not enough, and Chu Yang still had energy to spare, why not further expand the detection area of his divine sense? It was not that Chu Yang did not want to or could not do this. It was just that such a detection area could not be expanded any further. If it was expanded any further, it would interfere with the limit expansion of his divine sense when he was in danger. A distance of 5,000 feet was just the boundary between detection and limit expansion. Just as he was on his way to the auction hall of the Tang clan's third young master, he suddenly felt a throbbing in the range of his divine sense. At the same time, a ray of fast white light like a rainbow penetrated the space of the tribulation. Then, it flashed and disappeared. If he used his naked eye to detect it, or even his divine sense, he would not be able to detect it. But Chu Yang's tribulation space could sense the aura of danger. Chu Yang's hair stood on end. That ray of white light is actually a high-level saint. Why would he appear here? What the hell is going on? Chu Yang was shocked. The experts sent by the Demon Empress were basically all by Yao Ningning's side, and he was familiar with all of them. After doing this, the Demon Empress would never send anyone else over. Even if she did, she would definitely inform him. If that was the case, there was a high chance that the saint-level expert who appeared here was an enemy, and not a friend. Could it be Mo Yuntian's? Otherwise, why would he suddenly appear in Luohua City? Chu Yang's vigilance was raised to the highest level. But he didn't show it on his face. He quietly turned a corner and walked over at a moderate pace. As he got closer and closer to a certain location, Chu Yang discovered a few people. Chu Yang stealthily wiped his face, and changed into another appearance in an instant. Then, he calmly walked over. He had already locked onto a target. It was a black-robed man. Although that person looked ordinary and indifferent, like an ordinary person, Chu Yang could keenly feel that this person didn't care at all. Towards the world, towards life, towards everything, including himself, he didn't care at all. The black-robed man was also stained with blood. He seemed to be injured, but it could still be seen that the quality of his clothes was very good. In the current Luohua city, such injured people could be seen everywhere. They wouldn't attract any attention at all. With just a glance, Chu Yang immediately sensed that this person was injured. Although he tried his best to cover up his aura, after all, he was seriously injured. The weakness in his movements couldn't be hidden from others. Of course, this others could only be people above the same level. Ordinary martial artists wouldn't be able to discover him. Chu Yang's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he recalled the earth-shattering battle not too long ago, and the streaks of light that streaked across the sky. If there were any top experts here, it could only be those few. If they were on the Demon Emperor's side, they wouldn't hide their tracks like this. Could it be? Chu Yang's thoughts flashed. That person seemed to have noticed Chu Yang's attention and was walking away. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and suddenly walked over quickly. He directly rushed to the front of this person and said with a surprised face, "Hey, aren't you Wang Laowu? Why are you here? You bastard, I haven't seen you for many years, ha!" His tone was full of surprise and enthusiasm of meeting an old friend in a foreign land. Chu Yang patted his shoulder affectionately with one hand, as if they were brothers who had been separated for 3 million years and suddenly reunited in a war-torn street. That person frowned and looked at Chu Yang impatiently. Who are you? I don't know you. I'm not Wang Laowu. Chu Yang laughed and pointed at this person. He was overjoyed. Look, you bastard, you really are a bastard. You don't even recognize your hometown. Even if you're afraid that I'll ask you to pay me back, you don't have to do this, right? Wang Laowu, how can you do this? The villagers all say that you've made a fortune, but you can't ignore your hometown just because you've made a fortune. I won't ask for the small amount of money you owe my family, okay? That person snorted and said, You're unreasonable. After that, he flicked his sleeves and left. Chu Yang chased after him and said, Hey, Wang Laowu, you can't be like this. Back then, your family didn't even have money to eat. You borrowed real money from my family. At that time, you and your sister Wang Laowu and your father were honest. He promised that once the hard times were over, he would marry your sister Wang Laowu to me. Later, your family didn't pay back the money and moved away. My family didn't say anything. This is something that everyone in the village knows. Now you actually pretend that you don't know me. Chu Yang said with infinite grievance. Although I'm very poor now, you can't treat me like this. Wang Laowu! Wang Laowu! Wait for me. When this sentence was shouted out, it immediately caused a strong reaction from the people around. How can this person be like this? Someone muttered. Acting like this after getting money. This is called being ungrateful. He's worse than a pig or a dog. Yes, what's wrong with the rich nowadays? Why do they all have such a bad habit? He's simply a bastard. Stop right there. Say it clearly. Someone even blocked this person's path. Go? Where are you going? He helped you when your family was in danger. Now that you've become rich, you actually turn your back on him? How can your character be so despicable? I despise you. Don't you feel embarrassed? This person was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. I'm not some Wang Laowu. I don't know who he is at all. I'm already so old. How old is he? Why would I borrow some things from his family? Chu Yang said with an aggrieved look. Wang Laowu. I didn't think of asking you to pay me back. I also didn't think of marrying your sister. I'm not young anymore, and I have a wife. It's just that I suddenly saw you in a foreign land. I couldn't help but be surprised. I wanted to find a fellow villager to talk about the old days. How did you become like this? You really turned your back on me and refused to recognize me. There were more and more people around. They all criticized. That's right. How can you be like this? He didn't say that he wanted to do anything to you. Can't you say something reasonable? Rich people all have this problem. When they see someone, they think that they want to borrow money from them. They see a little bit of money as more important than the sky. I despise you. I also want to be rich. But even if I'm rich, I won't be like someone. Fuck. This person's chest completely exploded. When did such a fellow villager pop out? It had been at least 3 million years since he left his hometown. Even if there really was a fellow villager, he would have already turned into bones. Besides, when did I call myself Wang Laowu? I actually have a sister called Wang Laowu. Even if my father is retarded, he wouldn't name his daughter Wang Laowu, right? How retarded must he be? Shouldn't he name her Hua Tao or something like that? If it wasn't for the fact that he was seriously injured and had no choice but to come here to heal himself, he would have long slapped this guy to death. How could he allow this wretched guy to blabber in front of him? What the fuck is going on? Chu Yang, who hadn't used his acting skills for a long time, had now advanced his acting skills to another level. He had perfectly integrated his acting skills into his voice and image. Snot and tears flowed down his face as he complained tearfully. Old fifth bastard, how can you be like this? You really don't recognize me? I'm Gao Dequan. I'm really Gao Dequan. I'm your childhood friend. Turn around and look at me. Have you forgotten my face? It's only been a few years. I haven't changed much. I even recognize you. Why don't you recognize me? The onlookers were obviously confused by someone's acting skills. They fell into a one-sided situation. They all started to criticize him. People would never forget their nature of wanting to watch a good show. Moreover, they would always sympathize with the weak. Even if they didn't know each other and met by chance, it was the same. However, this person didn't look like a martial artist. Moreover, his temper was very soft. Everyone was really not rich. It was rare to see such a rich person who was so easy to bully. If they didn't take this opportunity to bully him, how could they live up to their poverty? Damn it, they were poor for nothing. Today, a friend got married. Last night, he was dragged to spend his bachelor's night with his friends. 20 to 30 brothers sat together and bragged. They bragged until their saliva was dry. In the morning, everyone walked past the groom. Everyone bowed and said with sorrow, "My condolences. From now on you're finished. You're no longer free." Chapter 2249. The face of the seemingly rich and soft man had already turned the color of pig trotters in soy sauce. He strode over and grabbed Gao Dequan. "Gao Dequan, let's go somewhere else and have a good talk." Chu Yang was delighted to hear this. He beamed and said, "You are finally willing to call me by my name? I knew you wouldn't forget me. Back then, we were so close under the moon. Good, good, good. I haven't heard from our hometown for a long time. Come, come, come. Let's go for a drink. Don't worry. I'll treat you to a drink. Although we are not very rich now, but we are from the same hometown. I don't lack the money for drinks. Are you relieved now?" Ha! This laugh was extremely forthright. This is a real man. Forthright. A real man. What a character! A real man repays enmity with kindness. Good. Amidst the cheers and applause, Chu Yang beamed. He was so happy that his eyes almost disappeared. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you so much. Everyone is a good person. I should have brought everyone with me. Unfortunately, I am embarrassed. I have the heart but not the strength. I can only thank you verbally. I wish you all a peaceful life." The man next to him had a twisted and ferocious face. He looked at this guy who called himself Gao Dequan and gritted his teeth. He couldn't wait to swallow him in one gulp. In fact, this person was a super expert of his generation. So, his mental fortitude wasn't something to be trifled with. So, he shouldn't have collapsed because of such a trivial matter. However, it was a coincidence that he was seriously injured at the moment. So, his mental fortitude was somewhat unstable. Moreover, he was being slandered by Chu Yang. Moreover, he couldn't refute Chu Yang's accusation. He could even clearly feel that his lips were trembling. His heart was beating violently. This was a sign that he was so angry that his whole body was trembling. It was a very normal behavior. This guy put me in this situation and still has a face full of joy. You are ruthless. Thinking this old bachelor suddenly felt a sharp pain in his 5 internal organs. His 5 internal organs that were almost smashed by the enemy were showing signs of collapse again. Endure. I must endure it. No matter what, I'm still a top expert of my generation. I can't be angered to death by such a wretched guy. Endure. I can't take it anymore, but I still have to take it. Finally, Chu Yang finished thanking him. Then, he walked hand in hand with this old fifth Wang, and the two of them went straight to a restaurant. Who exactly are you? What is the purpose of this? The man gritted his teeth and panted heavily, barely maintaining his composure as he asked. Wang Laowu, you! Chu Yang said innocently. Today, Chu Yang's acting skills were really beyond his level. It was a great loss to the acting world that he didn't become an actor back then. I'm not a bachelor. Why don't you fucking call me Wang Laowu one more time? The man couldn't hold it in any longer and exploded. Alright, Elder Wang's brother, how can you be like this? Chu Yang was still improvising. "Ah wow, I'm going crazy." The man went crazy and banged his head on the table. He was in so much pain that he wanted to cry but had no tears. "What do you want? Ah." At the table, the waiter who had just walked over was shocked. This, customer, I'm here to ask the two of you what dishes you want to order. Oh my God." The man looked up to the sky and sighed. His eyes stared blankly as if he didn't know what he was talking about. His life spanned hundreds of millions of miles, and his sword was once 1,000,000 masters. When have I ever received such disgusting and terrible treatment? Until Chu Yang ordered a table full of food and wine, the man's eyes were still blank and he didn't say a word. Come, Wang Laowu, Elder Wang's brother, we brothers have not seen each other for a long time. We must drink to our heart's content." Chu Yang enthusiastically raised his wine cup and urged him to drink. The man seemed to have woken up from a daze. He took a few deep breaths and suddenly looked at Chu Yang like a hawk. "Who are you?" Chu Yang smiled. "Who am I? Why don't you guess?" The man's eyes changed from the initial anger to deep thought. "You are obviously not Gao Dequan," the man said with certainty. "Well, you're right. It's a very rational judgment." Chu Yang smiled and raised his cup to invite him to drink. "I'm also definitely not Wang Laowu." When the man said this, the muscles on his face twitched again. His eyes instantly became fierce. "Damn it, how could I say such a degrading thing? Who am I? I don't even know myself. How can I be sure by someone else? May I ask Senior's name?" Chu Yang instantly knew that the person in front of him was really angry. He couldn't provoke him any further. What if he took an inch and wanted a mile? Wouldn't he know whether he was a bachelor or not? The two sides would definitely fight on the spot. There was no other possibility. Therefore, he asked in a very humble voice. He was like a completely different person from before. "Your current appearance should be a disguise, right?" The man turned a deaf ear to Chu Yang's question. He looked at Chu Yang's face and sneered. "Although this disguise is very clever, very natural and almost flawless, your eyes are too clear now. Such clear eyes shouldn't appear on such a vulgar face. You and I are all cultivators. You should understand what I'm saying." Chu Yang nodded and said very respectfully, "I've learned something." The respect this time was not deliberately pretentious. It was sincere. Chu Yang had thought about this before, but he didn't hit the nail on the head like the man in front of him. "You disguised yourself after you found me by chance, right?" the man said. "Generally, people whose divine senses are not at the level of a high-level sage will not be able to find my traces. But you are obviously not at that level. This puzzles me." The man looked at Chu Yang with an inquisitive gaze. In fact, if not for this suspicion, perhaps this man would have already killed Chu Yang. It was because of this uncertainty that the two of them talked on equal terms. "I am indeed not at that level. Senior's eyes are right," Chu Yang admitted. "Although you are not at that level, you have the ability to find me. This undoubtedly shows that your divine senses are special," the man said. Chu Yang frowned. "And the most important point. You are not at the level of a high-level sage, but you have the guts to tease me like this. You must have noticed that I was injured previously. In my current state, I can't do anything to you. That's why you have the guts, right?" the man said sharply. Chu Yang still didn't deny it. He nodded again. A peak expert was indeed a peak expert. Although he was angered to the point of being at a loss, he changed in an instant. After a moment of adaptation, his mood immediately stabilized. "This is the Demon Emperor Heaven. It is the foundation of the demon race. But you are obviously not a demon." The man continued his analysis. "There is no demon aura on you at all," he said with certainty. Chu Yang nodded. "Yes, I am not a demon. There have never been many human experts in the Demon Emperor's celestial clan. Those whose divine senses are as sharp as yours and far surpass their own cultivation are extremely rare. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that they are 1 in 10,000. The man's eyes were filled with murderous intent. Although your cultivation is too far away from the rumors. I think I know who you are. Chu Jiang was silent for a moment. Senior's mind is clear and careful. Chu Yang admires you. The man laughed, but his expression turned cold. It is indeed you, Chu Jiang said lightly. It is indeed me. But even if you want to kill me now, you are powerless. Since you can't kill me, why don't you have a drink with me? It is fate that we met. Since we are fated, why don't we drink together? The man took a deep breath. I may not be unable to kill you. Chu Yang smiled. Your Excellency only has the strength for one more attack. You may be able to kill me or injure me severely. But no matter what happens to me, you'll definitely die after this attack. I believe that you will not do such a huge deal that loses everything and loses everything. Chu Yang smiled and raised his cup. This wine is really good. The dishes are also good. Even if I die tomorrow, why don't we get drunk today? The man looked at him with cold eyes. After a long time, a rare smile finally appeared in his eyes. Yes, even if I die tomorrow, why don't we get drunk today? Please! Please! The two of them raised their cups together, and drank the wind and snow in one gulp. Since we are fated to drink together, I have not asked for Senior's name. It is really rude of me. Chu Yang ate. After saying those words, the two of them became a little more relaxed. Their previous cautiousness and caution had completely disappeared at this moment. They were all people who had reached a similar level, so there was still a little bit of trust between them. As people of Jianghu, they had experienced the hardships of Jianghu together. They could create a peaceful space for a while. I am Xu Kuang. The man held his cup. When he said his name, his aura seemed to have changed instantly. So it is Senior Xu Kuang, Chu Jiang said seriously. I have heard of your name for a long time. Like thunder in my ears, the bright moon in the sky. You think so highly of me? Are you sure? Xu Kuang looked at him with a faint smile. Are you not trying to trick me? Chu Jiang smiled and recited slowly. I am not crazy after reading all the poems and books. Since ancient times, I have been the king. Above my head, I dance with the sun and moon. My heart is long, but my love is longer. Xu Kuang sighed softly. I didn't expect you to know me, Chu Jiang said in a low voice. Actually, I like the last 5 words of your poem the most. Xu Kuang murmured. The heart is long, but my love is longer, yes. Chu Yang smiled. At this moment, his smile was warm. The heart is long, but my love is longer. Chapter 2250. Book Kuang chuckled with some unknown bitterness. He shook his head and said, Drink! Drink! Let's drink together. How can you talk more than you drink? The two drank a few more cups. Chu Yang opened another topic and said, Senior Book Kuang, I'm very interested to know what happened back then. There are many people who want to know. Although Chu Yang said without rhyme or reason, Book Kuang obviously knew what he was talking about. He smiled bitterly and said, But I can't say it. I really can't say it. I know. Chu Yang rolled his eyes and said, But it's just talking about yourself. Is this okay? Just take it as a topic to drink. Talking about myself. Ha. Book Kuang smiled bitterly and said, Actually, the road is longer than the road of love. It should be. He was silent for a moment and said, The road of love is longer. Chu Yang was startled when he heard this. Book Kuang picked up his cup and drank it in one gulp. He laughed and said, The road of love is broken. Is it long love or long road? He drank another cup and said, Love is dead but the body is alive. Love is long or life is long? He drank another cup and said, The body is alive but the heart is dead. It turns out that love is long and love is long. If not, how can the heart be dead? Then he picked up a wine jar and poured it into his mouth. With a bang, the empty jar was placed on the table. Book Kuang murmured, This is a goddamn fate. This bastard god. This fucked up world. This cowardly life. He looked up at Chu Yang and said, "This is my own story. It's a mess." Chu Yang fell into silence. However, Chu Yang had already heard too much from these few sentences that had no head or tail. Book Kwang was seriously injured. If he were an ordinary cultivator, he might have died thousands of times. But the book maniac could still sit there and drink with insolence. All of his current cultivation was used to suppress his injuries. Therefore, all the wine he drank was carried by his own body. It was like an ordinary person who had never cultivated drinking wine. In fact, it was even more serious. Apparently, he was already a little drunk. However, these words were definitely not drunken words. They contained the kind of regret, sadness, and loss that was like a tsunami. And this made Chu Yang, who was listening to them, feel shocked. In an instant, Chu Yang inexplicably recalled the moment when Mo Qingwu died in his arms in his previous life. "The road to love is longer, the road to love is longer." Chu Yang sighed. He couldn't help but think of Mo Qingwu, whom he hadn't seen for a long time. Finally, he couldn't help but mutter to himself, "Qingwu, are you all right?" Tens of thousands of miles away, in the dreamlike veranda, Mo Qingwu sat cross-legged under the clock. It was obvious that she had reached a critical juncture. Behind her, the two ancestral masters of the dreamlike veranda were also doing their best. Mo Qingwu would reach the heavens in a single bound as long as she could overcome this hurdle. She would transcend the mortal world and become a saint. She would become one of the top experts in the world. However, this hurdle had yet to be completed until now. Everyone was already exhausted. They wanted to do it, but they didn't have the strength to. Mo Qingwu's heart demon invasion was already very serious. On her beautiful face, a somewhat frenzied expression constantly appeared. Frenzied madness and clear-headedness intertwined back and forth. The two ancestral masters sighed in their hearts. It looked like she really wouldn't be able to make it. This girl's heart hurdle was really too heavy. It was really difficult to overcome. If she couldn't overcome the hurdle of love here, she would eventually stop at her current level, and there would be no possibility of further advancement. The two ancestral masters looked at each other, and actually had the thought of stopping. If they continued to force it, Mo Qingwu might become a cripple, but the two of them would inevitably suffer heavy injuries. The two ancestral masters, who knew that the situation had developed to this point, couldn't help but sigh in their hearts at the same time. They didn't know what was so good about that Chu Yang that could actually make this girl so infatuated with him to this extent. Dreamlike Mortal World Pavilion, as the name implied, meant that the world of mortals was like a dream. In a dream of the world of mortals, one could cut off the roots of love and become untainted by the world of mortals. This was the true essence of the dreamlike Mortal World Pavilion's mental cultivation method. Only by cutting off the roots of love and overcoming the hurdle of love could one reach the level of great success of the sex mental cultivation method. Once one failed to pass, even if one had extraordinary talent and outstanding qualifications, it would still be a pie in the sky. But now, Mo Qingwu, whom everyone in the dreamlike Mortal World Pavilion regarded as their future hope and spiritual sustenance, actually did the opposite. She was deeply in love. "You're so young. You're only a few years old, and you're still really pure. Why is your heart so? What a sin!" The two ancestral masters sighed at the same time. They watched as a peerless prodigy was about to be destroyed by love. How could this scene not make them sigh? However, at this moment, just when everyone was helpless and reluctant to give up, but still had to choose to give up in the end, Mo Qingwu's surging emotions, which were already so intense that they were boiling and had absolutely no possibility of being suppressed, suddenly exploded beyond its limits. From being emotional, passionate, and extreme, it suddenly rose to the peak. It was a complete eruption of the limit. No, it was an explosion beyond the limit. Mo Qingwu, who was still in the land of chaos, inexplicably let out a soft cry of joy. "Chu Yang, are you thinking of me?" She suddenly opened her eyes. Her eyes shot out an enchanting divine light of transcendence, full of happiness and satisfaction. All of his previous worries about personal gains and losses, as well as being neither close nor distant, suddenly disappeared without a trace. As long as you miss me. No matter where you are, no matter where you are, I can feel it if you miss me. No matter how far away we are, as long as you have me in your heart, I have no regrets. Mo Qingwu's emotions seemed to have sensed some subtle changes. She became calm and peaceful. All the previous worries, all the pettiness, all the jealousy, all disappeared without a trace at this moment, as if they didn't exist. It turns out that what I want is actually so simple and pure, just like this. Extreme in love, extreme in Dharma, extreme in heart, all Dharma is extreme. Under the dumbfounded, tongue-tied, incredulous and disbelieving gazes of the two grandmasters, Mo Qingwu's body suddenly rose 3 feet slowly, and just like that, she fell in midair. The next moment, the boiling aura around her suddenly paused, as if it was completely still. Then, the sky full of multicolored light danced and fell crazily as if the sky was collapsing. Below her, there were countless holy white lights surging in spirals, turning into a holy and pure white lotus. It kept surging and blooming, like a fountain, countless petals kept coming out. It held Mo Qingwu's body steadily. 1 flower, 2 flowers, 3 flowers, slowly, the number of holy white lotuses that emerged finally reached the limit, 1. However, the white light from the ground was still gushing out crazily, half of it entering Mo Qingwu's body, and the other half entering that white lotus. It was endless, endless, endless. The 4 eyeballs of the two grandmasters popped out of their eye sockets at the same time. The two of them stretched their necks, widened their eyes, tilted their heads, and opened their mouths wide. This appearance was undoubtedly extremely indecent, especially on the bodies of women, and 2 of them were rather good-looking women. There was no need to doubt, and no need to be puzzled. The members of the dreamlike secular pavilion were all women, especially those with high status. What was so surprising about the 2 elders being women, and very beautiful women at that? But 2 beautiful women losing their composure at the same time was undoubtedly very indecent, very embarrassing. But the 2 of them obviously couldn't think of any indecent or embarrassing questions now, and were directly in a mess. For a moment, their minds were in a mess, and they didn't know what to think or say. There were only 4 words in their minds. How is this possible? This can't be. How can this be? After a long time, the 2 of them finally came back to their senses. They looked at each other, and saw the deep shock in each other's eyes, as well as completely unconcealed envy and jealousy. Heaven's net rosy clouds, earth's surging holy lotus, lotus platform, dreamlike secular world. These 4 sentences were the origin of the name of the dreamlike secular pavilion. It was also the ultimate phenomenon that occurred when the dreamlike secular pavilion's cultivation technique was cultivated to the highest level, and when the real, dreamlike secular world cultivation technique was unlocked. It was just that this ultimate realm seemed to have not been achieved by anyone for a very, very long time. Or rather, no one had achieved it except for the founders. The 2 founders only felt that their minds were in a mess, and they couldn't sort it out. How could this be? Mo Qingwu had obviously gone into the wrong direction, to the extreme, and stepped on the road of no return. The yellow spring was approaching, and the soul was leaving the spring at any time. Why did this happen instead? Could it be that we saw wrongly? They rubbed their eyes hard, and when they opened them again, they still saw the sky full of rosy clouds and white lotuses everywhere. The 2 founders only felt that they were going crazy in an instant. At the same time, they started to recite the highest level of the dreamlike secular pavilion. Dreamlike secular world, both illusory and real, break through the barrier of love, right heart and right spirit. Jade is pure and clear, the door of Tao opens. Secular world, dreamlike secular world. Only halfway through the recitation, the 2 stopped at the same time. Both of them were experts in cultivation, and they instantly discovered the key point. The problem obviously lay in the 4 words. Break through the barrier of love. The 2 looked at the rosy clouds all over Mo Qingwu's body, and looked at the golden lotuses that kept gushing out from the ground. Their hearts were filled with inexplicable bitterness, and they couldn't help but have the urge to cry out loud. One must know that ever since the founder of the dreamlike secular pavilion passed away, no one in the dreamlike secular world cultivation technique could cultivate the highest level of the dreamlike secular world cultivation technique. Although in these years, there were people who cultivated to the saint level, and even high-level saints at the peak. However, this legendary scene of rosy clouds descending from the sky, holy lotuses gushing out from the ground, and the reopening of the lotus platform never appeared again. Everyone only thought that their hearts were not sincere, or that they had not reached the level of merit, so generation after generation, they strictly followed the ancestral teachings, strictly forbidding the disciples from falling in love. The third prestige lottery is about to begin. Brothers and sisters, hurry up and leave a message, the opportunity is great. Chapter 2251. Although Emo Chingwu was already the most highly regarded among the younger generation in terms of cultivating the dreamlike mortal cultivation technique, and was also recognized by everyone as the one with the highest possibility of cultivating to the highest realm again, everyone was still filled with uncertainty in their hearts. They didn't think that Emo Chingwu could really reach that legendary realm. However, they did not expect that the inheritance of the mental cultivation method had actually gone into a wrong direction right from the start. Break through the barrier of love. It was not sealing the heart and locking the love at all. It was also not the inhumane prohibition of the feelings between men and women. Breaking through the barrier of love, could it be that, only when one loves to the extreme and their feelings are as deep as the sea, could one be considered to have broken through the barrier of love? Extreme in love, extreme in the method, extreme in the heart, all the methods are extreme. Emo Chingwu's body displayed the highest realm of the dreamlike mortal cultivation method, the supreme aura of the supreme realm. This was the first time in 1,000,000 years that this had happened to a descendant of the dreamlike veranda. It turns out that we were wrong all these years. The two ancestral masters' faces were full of tears. At this moment, their hearts were almost dead. They almost had the urge to cut their own throats. Most of the members of the dreamlike secular pavilion were women. However, all the women with good aptitudes, pure hearts, and cultivation materials were outstanding. Which one of them was not a peerless beauty? With so many beauties around, which one of them didn't have a dreamlike appearance and a flower-like appearance? Which one of them did not have the feelings of a young girl? Which one of them did not have a lover who loved them wholeheartedly, or a person who was devoted to them for 10,000 years without regret? However, due to the harsh rules of the sect, each of them could only seal the love in the depths of their hearts forever. Enduring their hearts, with a cold face, they heartlessly rejected their lover. They had to bear this endless pain and loneliness alone. So many beautiful years, so much youth, were mercilessly wasted just like that. In the end, it was all because of a misunderstanding. It was because they had taken the wrong path and acted in the wrong way from the beginning. The two ancestral masters were dumbfounded. They were also people who had been through it. Back then, to break through the barrier of love, they had tried their true feelings, and they had also sincerely given up and loved each other wholeheartedly. Originally, they thought that their hearts had already closed and would never open again. Now that they thought about it, they could only feel tears flowing down their cheeks. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, that man with a face full of love, looking at her with a heart full of despair, that heartbreak, that powerless resentment. She seemed to hear that person's heartfelt plea again. "Come with me. I beg you, come with me." That man was such a proud man. But for her sake, he did not hesitate to put down his pride and beg. If it was not for that true love, how could he be so humble for love? "Don't practice that kung fu anymore, come with me. I will protect you." Why? Why is this? Why are you doing this? In the end, the man who loved her deeply screamed towards the sky in despair, his face full of tears. Why is this? For what reason? That man who had cried out to the heavens and earth, that man whose heart had been broken by her. "If you don't marry, I won't marry. I will wait for a lifetime." That hopeless and powerless vow, that lonely and bleak figure that staggered away, Many years later, that man had walked his life's journey in endless loneliness, but he had never forgotten that vow, that he would cross 1,000 mountains and rivers just to see her one last time. Before he died, his lips trembled, and he looked at her and begged, "In the next life, don't practice this, okay?" He still remembered the heart-wrenching pain he felt when he faced the new grave. They were separated forever. That man who had loved her his whole life, lived alone his whole life, and never got the slightest taste of love from her, slept in this yellow soil. His last words before he died were, "No regrets. No regrets for you. If there is a next life, will you marry me?" Seeing Mo Ching Wu practice the true meaning of the dreamlike mortal cultivation method because of extreme emotions, the two ancestral masters were heartbroken. Facts speak louder than words. Breaking through the barrier of love is never to reject love. Being pure as jade is absolutely not only a virgin. Being loyal to the person you love is also a kind of pure as jade. Loving each other wholeheartedly, loving each other to the extreme, understanding each other's true feelings, is the true breaking of the barrier of love. I finally understand it. But I understood it too late. Too late by hundreds of thousands of years. That man who once loved me so deeply, where is he? Where is he? Mo Ching Wu's cultivation was complete, and she slowly stopped. She only felt happiness and satisfaction in her heart. Chu Yang, I have mastered it. I have improved. I can follow you now, I can protect you. I can share your burden. I can dance with you. From now on, I am as light as a dream, floating like a dream, floating like a dream, floating like a dream. Dancing in the sea of blood and mountain of bones enchanting, roaming the Jianghu, accompanying you in the sea of blood and mountain of bones, you can always see my inextinguishable enchanting. Don't ask if I can fight 1,000 miles with my sword, from now on, I can fight 1,000 miles with you. Don't ask if I regret it, having you in this world, having you by my side is enough. Life and death together. I will follow you in life and death, whether it is heaven or hell, whether it is wind or frost, whether it is difficult or dangerous, whether it is any, I only care about life and death. Slowly stopping, the rosy clouds in the sky gradually disappeared, and the sacred lotus on the ground also disappeared in an instant. Mo Ching Wu gently opened her eyes, but as soon as she opened her eyes, she saw two people in tears. Two ancestral masters, what happened to you? Looking at the two ancestral masters who seemed to have aged a few hundred years in a very short time, Mo Ching Wu panicked. What is going on? The two ancestral masters were clearly young and beautiful before. How did they become like this now? Could it be that my seclusion this time actually took a few hundred years? This is impossible, right? Mo Ching Wu's heart was in an indescribable panic. We are fine. We are very happy, very happy. The two ancestral masters choked and said, Congratulations, Ching Wu! You've finally mastered the highest level of our dreamlike world cultivation technique. Thank you. You've made us realize what the real, dreamlike world cultivation technique is. It turns out that the so-called truth of love is so simple and pure. The two ancestral masters looked up to the sky and sighed. At the same time, we were envious of you, jealous of you, and hated you even more. You let us know how stupid we were. How stupid we were. At this moment, how regretful our hearts are, thinking of the back mountain of the dreamlike mortal pavilion. There were many graves there. How many seniors and juniors had fallen into eternal slumber there, spending their entire lives in solitude with their aunt, spending their entire lives in loneliness. What did we miss? How much did we miss? Thinking of how many women's graves were engraved with the words grave of the Wang clan, grave of the Li clan, grave of the Li clan. Thinking about it now, we were actually so envious. We actually also wanted to be able to have the surname of our beloved on our tombstone after death. Whether dead or alive, we would have a home to return to, and have someone to rely on. Who would know that we, the overbearing women who seemed to be peerless in our generation, who could move unhindered in the imperial court of heaven, would be envious of an ordinary woman's grave? From now on, The dreamlike mortal pavilion will never forbid marriage. Anyone who dares to obstruct the free marriage of their disciples will be punished with capital punishment. Tears streamed down the faces of the two patriarchs as they gave this order at the same time. This was a decision that had been delayed for a long time. From now on, the two of us will go out for a trip. The dreamlike mortal pavilion's mountain gate will be opened wide. If anyone wants to go out, you can go out by yourself. You are free to enter and leave. Go and see that person, even if he is already under the yellow soil. Immediately gather all the higher-ups of the dreamlike mortal pavilion and start the cultivation method discussion. One order after another was sent out like flowing water. The entire dreamlike mortal pavilion was suddenly in an uproar. A few days later, many graceful figures left the mountain gate as if they were flying. They flew in different directions as if their lives were on the line. I want to see your grave. I want to see you under the yellow soil. I want to tell you that I was wrong. I was really wrong. I let you down. Let me tell you, if there is a next life, I will definitely marry you. As long as you still want me. I want to see you now. No matter if you are white-haired or old, I want to ask you, if I marry you now, will you still want me? Is it too late? Is it too late? I am coming, no matter how you are now, wait for me. You must wait for me. Every woman's face and eyes were filled with indescribable anxiety. There was anticipation, shyness, but also fear and hesitation. I heard you like that before. But now I know that I was indeed wrong. Will you still want me? The feelings that I severed back then, are they still there now? There was only one person who was flying at top speed with an intoxicating smile on her face. That was full of satisfaction and a sincere desire to meet soon. That was Mo Qingwu. Mo Qingwu finally left the dreamlike mortal pavilion. She flew all the way to the demon emperor heaven, traveling day and night. She almost didn't rest at all as she hurried on her journey. The mountains were thousands of miles away and the rivers were long. But her heart had long had a clear direction. Her final destination. Now, she was flying towards her own happiness. The end of this journey was the end of her dream. Other than that, everything else in the world was no longer in her eyes and no longer existed in her heart. Chu Yang, I am coming. From now on, I will go through thick and thin with you, share a fate, and dance together. For life, I will never leave you. Before Mo Qingwu left, at the Dreamlike Mortal Pavilion's cultivation technique seminar, everyone sincerely sought advice from Mo Qingwu. How exactly should one break through the barrier of love? Mo Qingwu only left behind 4 sentences. Light like a dream, floating like a dream, dancing enchanting like a sea of blood and a mountain of bones. Don't question a sword for 1,000 miles, life and death together. Chapter 2252. These few lines were a poem that Shui Leihan wrote to Mo Qingwu in the previous life. It was also the name of the 8th fragment of Chu Yang's Calamity Sword, and also a summary of Mo Qingwu's feelings in her life. Having lived 2 lives, the word love had never changed. For Qingwu, for Qingwu, for Qingwu, for Qingwu, for Qingwu. Life and death, but also for Qingwu. But what Mo Qingwu didn't know was that from then on, these few lines had become an essential part of Dreamlike Veranda's mental cultivation technique. At the same time, it was also an explanation of the highest mental cultivation technique. Light like a dream, floating. Why did it say that? Dreamlike Veranda, as the name implied, was a dream without any weight, so it floated. In other words, to practice this technique, one needed to be indifferent to the mortal world. A sea of blood and a mountain of bones dancing enchantingly. What was a sea of blood and a mountain of bones? That was the path of the Jianghu. The path of the Jianghu was not the path of return, so to practice this technique, don't have any other thoughts. Dance enchantingly. What was enchantingly? Enchantingly, a beauty. As for dance, what was dance? Dance, the simplest explanation was dancing. Then, who would an enchantingly beautiful woman dance for? She only danced for one person in her life. This was a woman. Therefore, to practice this technique, it was still important to put women first. From that moment on, Dreamlike Veranda officially became a pure female sect. Male disciples, no matter how outstanding their talents were, would not be accepted in the future. Don't ask me to fight 1,000 miles with a sword. You don't need to ask, I will naturally fight 1,000 miles with you, to repay kindness and revenge. For the person I love, I can also fight in the Jianghu. But there must be a king. Life and death together. Life and death together, it was about love. What was love? Love was to follow in life and death, to never leave or abandon. To the sky, what was the sky? It was the sky. If I can follow in the sky, then what about the ground? This meant that no matter what, I will be with you. A daughter is rare for loyalty. A man is rare for loyalty. Extreme in love, extreme in law, extreme in the heart, all laws are extreme. This was the real Dreamlike Veranda. See clearly, remember it in your heart, and don't pay too much attention to it. From then on, from these 4 lines, Dreamlike Veranda was truly on the right track. The regularity of the heart, the regularity of love, and the regularity of life. And Mo Qingwu had become the 2nd-generation ancestor of the Dreamlike World Pavilion because she had left behind these words. He became the #1 contributor to the creation of the Dreamlike Mortal Pavilion's true cultivation method inheritance. Of course, this was something that would happen a long time later. At this moment, Mo Qingwu was walking on the road. Towards the Demon Emperor Heaven, towards where Chu Yang was, he flew. That was where her dream was, the way home. Actually, wine is really a good thing. Chu Yang raised his cup and said, Elder Shu, wine can make you forget your troubles when you're unhappy. It can also make you recall memories that you can't forget. It can also make you open up old memories that have been sealed for a long time. Shu Kuang chuckled. His eyes were somewhat blurred. Then, he suddenly looked straight at Chu Yang and said, Do you know why I want to get drunk? He actually squinted his eyes a little mischievously and said, Especially in front of you, my enemy, yet I can get drunk so easily? Chu Yang pondered seriously for a moment. Then, he smiled and said, Actually, sometimes in life, the enemy is much more reliable than some people around you. Elder, do you agree with this reason of mine? Shu Kuang laughed and said, Well said, this is the most important reason, the most important of all. Of course, there must be other reasons. Shu Kuang said, You're young. To be honest, I really admire you. Although I still have to kill you in the end, I really admire you. Even though our positions are clear, I don't want to speak against my conscience. Chu Yang said, Oh? When you killed Yuan Shu too, you were really straightforward. Shu Kuang narrowed his eyes and said, I admire this very much. Although your killing intent was unparalleled that day, you were still a small ant in the end. Even if Yuan Shu Tu didn't expose Mo Yun Heaven's identity, his sect was still not something that you could provoke. For you at that time, provoking such a super sect was actually not much different from provoking the entire Mo Yun Heaven or even the Mo Yun Heaven's royal family. But you still killed him without hesitation. I admire you very much, and I also envy you very much. In addition, I'm also very jealous. Shu Kuang laughed and said, You're really young. You're young, and your actions are really to my taste. And your character is also not bad. Shu Kuang said, Just like today, I'm in trouble now. I believe that you have countless ways to easily kill me. There's no need for you to personally step into the dangerous place and risk your life to give me a chance to fight with you. But you didn't do so. Instead, you generously invited me to drink and talk to me sincerely. He narrowed his eyes and said, I admire this character of yours. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, Elder, you're seriously injured now. If I were to fight, it would be a joke and even more unfair. Although there's no enmity between you and me in the past, in the end, we'll have to fight to the death. Jianghu matters will always be settled in Jianghu. Jianghu matters will always be settled in Jianghu. It's nothing more than that. Shu Kuang laughed loudly and arrogantly. For some reason, Chu Yang always had a feeling that in the process of talking to Shu Kuang, there seemed to be something in Xu Kuang's heart that was always ready to move. That was a kind of emotion. A kind of special emotion that seemed to have been suppressed for a very long time. The most important reason, Xu Kuang drank 3 cups in a row and suddenly smiled, is because, although there was a smile on his face, at this moment, there was a bone-deep sorrow that was boundless and endless. It's because you can kill anyone for your woman. At all costs. This makes me envious, jealous, and hate you. Xu Kuang laughed and said, Because I don't. Chu Yang frowned and said, You don't? I don't. I'm not as good as you. I admit that I'm not as good as you. Xu Kuang smiled bitterly and said, Back then, I had 2 wives and 5 concubines. Although I felt that my cultivation was not weak, I didn't think of competing for the position of the emperor. Every day, I just focused on bringing them around to play and laughing. But finally, one day, we were attacked by strong enemies. There were more than 10 high-level saints, and they attacked me at the same time. At that time, I was unprepared. At the first moment, I was seriously injured and the situation was completely out of control. That day, in order to cover my escape, 3 of my concubines self-destructed and died. Her soft and delicate body instantly turned into a bloody mist that filled the sky. As for the other 2 concubines, one of them died together with the enemy in order to protect my wife. The other one was killed by the enemy. Of my 2 wives, one carried me and escaped, while the other stayed behind to stop the enemy with her life. After being seriously injured, she was captured and committed suicide. The one who carried me and escaped was my first wife. My wife, Menger, burned her life potential and tried her best to escape with me. For more than 300,000 miles, she didn't rest for a moment. Finally, she sent me safely to the Mist River. Half a day later, she died of exhaustion. I still can't forget that she carried me and sank into the river. Seeing that my injuries had recovered, her eyes had a trace of relief. Then, she kept vomiting blood and died in my arms. In the last part of the journey, she actually burned her original divine soul as the price to survive. Her divine soul was completely destroyed and she was beyond redemption. At that time, I could only watch helplessly and couldn't move at all. I watched them self-destruct and die one by one. I watched her get killed. I watched her block the enemy alone. I watched her escape with me for hundreds of thousands of miles. I watched her die in my arms. Xu Kuang's eyes were a little frantic. But I couldn't do anything. I couldn't. Chu Yang frowned and said, With your status and cultivation, there's actually someone who can do this? If you didn't say it yourself, it's really hard to believe. All these years, I've been investigating. Who is it that wants to deal with me? Why do they want to deal with me? Xu Kuang sneered. The group of people who ambushed me at that time were all masked and disguised. They even used strange techniques to hide their characteristics. But I tracked them down all the way and finally found them one by one. There were a total of 10 people in that group. 18 of them were killed by me one by one. But the last one, the leader, I still couldn't find out who he was. How can I take revenge if I don't get rid of the leader? I didn't participate in the battle between the kings. But Yuan Tianjia promised to help me take revenge. Furthermore, with Sage Monarch as my guarantor, it was Yuan Tianming who helped me investigate those 18 people. So, I'm willing to serve him to death. Xu Kuang took a deep breath and exhaled deeply. When he said these words, his expression was very strange. There was a faint indifference of a dead heart. His tone was extremely flat. Such an unbearable past seemed to be telling someone else's story in his presence. So, I'm very envious of you. I'm very jealous of you. I even hate you. Although you're being hunted down by the entire Moyen sky, you're still protecting your woman until now. I'm not as good as you. I admit that I'm not as good as you. Xu Kuang said sincerely. Just on this point, I'm already far behind you. So, when you invited me to drink today, I didn't hesitate at all and came just like that. Because, even if you didn't invite me, I must give you a toast. A toast to someone who can make me sincerely admire you. A man. A good man. Crazy Book raised his wine cup and respectfully looked at Chu Yang with a kind of unprecedented awe and envy. Here's a toast to you. Good. Cheers. Chu Yang drank up. What is a man? Only a man who protects his family and his woman well is a good man. Shu Kuang smiled. His smile was always very indifferent. But no matter how one looked at it, it felt a little miserable. Chapter 2253. Back then, there were 10 people who besieged you. 10 high-level sages. Now 18 of them have been killed. Chu Yang frowned. Was it during the Battle of the Kings? Shu Kuang took a deep breath. It was earlier than the Battle of the Kings. It wasn't until 3 years after I was attacked that the Battle of the Kings broke out. After a series of battles, the ownership of the Heavenly Imperial Court was finally determined. Chu Yang nodded lightly and said meaningfully, Originally, Yuan Tianji was still a very loyal person. Shu Kuang said. To me, he was indeed very loyal to me. Those 18 people were all found out by him, and then killed by me one by one. If it weren't for his help, I believe that even if I spent my whole life, I might not be able to find them, let alone take revenge. So I was willing to assist him and become the Lord of Black Cloud Sky. Shu Kuang raised his head and looked at Chu Yang. So, I will do my best to take revenge for his son. No matter how unfilial his son was and how he deserved to die, even if I have to wipe out my conscience, I will still do it. Chu Yang sighed deeply, looking at the King of Books in front of him. For a moment, there was a lot of pity in his heart. Those 18 people, their martial arts were very high, right? Chu Yang asked. Of course. If they weren't extremely powerful, they wouldn't have been able to injure me so badly that I couldn't fight back. Shu Kuang gritted his teeth. If they fought alone, they were no match for me. But if the 18 of them joined forces, I could only escape. Even the chance of escaping was very slim. Chu Yang said. Is that so? Then, would they not know that you are actually still alive? This is very important. It concerns the life and death of all of them. But they didn't join forces again. They didn't even confirm your life and death. Do you know what this means? In my opinion, at that time, confirming whether you were alive or dead was the most important thing for them to do. And from the day you took your revenge, other than the first unlucky one, the other 18 people joined forces again to kill you and eliminate all future troubles. That was the most urgent thing for them to do. But they allowed you to defeat them one by one, killing them one by one. This is really thought-provoking. I don't think there are any idiots among those who have reached that level of cultivation. At the very least, not all of them are idiots, right? At the very least, after you killed a few of them, the remaining people should have known and realized it, but they still didn't take any action. I waited until you killed all 18 of them. This process seemed clean and tidy, but it was really thought-provoking. Back then, when they provoked an enemy like you, they clearly stood on different sides and could not live under the same sky. You died and came back to life, so they must be determined to take revenge. Instead, he is able to disregard life and death. Chu Yang smiled and said, The willpower of these 10 people is really extraordinary. The bookworm's complexion suddenly became dangerous. He stared at Chu Yang with his hawk-like sharp eyes. What do you mean by saying these words? What are you trying to sow discord? I don't mean anything, and I'm not trying to sow discord. Chu Yang said calmly. I'm just surprised at the stupidity of these people. If it were any other person in their position, after provoking such a strong enemy like you, they actually didn't confirm whether they had eliminated the source of trouble, and were willing to conceal their identities. Perhaps you can understand that they thought that you were dead and that there would be no future trouble. However, after suffering from your series of revenge, they actually did not join forces to counterattack. There were more than 10 high-level saints. If they were to join forces, their strength would be quite terrifying. Could it be that they were too confident in the place where they were hiding after they changed their names? Unfortunately, such a secret place was still found out by Yuan Tianjie. Yuan Tianjie's ability is really strong. It's still worth it to serve such a powerful master. The bookworm heard these words that were both praise and derogatory, but also seemed to be reasonable. He immediately stood up. For so many years, every time he thought of the tragic death of his beloved wife and concubines, he felt as if his heart was being cut by a knife. Every night, he would dream of it and feel heartbroken. Only at the moment when he killed an enemy could there be a channel for the hatred in his heart to be vented a little bit. All this time, other than revenge, he had never thought of any other possibility. But today, after hearing Chu Yang's words, he suddenly felt a great shock in his heart, and his imagination ran wild. Have you ever killed the wrong person? Chu Yang asked. No, definitely not. The bookworm said in a daze, as if he was answering Chu Yang, but also telling himself. Yuan Tianji, I really found the right person. I'm impressed. He's worthy of being the master of this world. Chu Yang praised sincerely. But when the listeners heard this sincere praise, they really felt that the words were insincere. The bookworm was silent and didn't refute. By the way, there's still no news about the real culprit, the one who took the lead for hundreds of thousands of years. Chu Yang asked. No. The bookworm sat down slowly. Puff. He sat on the chair. In this case, Yuan Tianjie seems to be too useless. The first 18 people have been found, and there's only this last one left. He can't even find it after hundreds of thousands of years. Chu Yang said disdainfully. The first 18 people were found so smoothly, why is the most important one so difficult? Those 18 people, none of them is weak. The bookworm sat down and said in a low voice. His face was very ugly. How are they compared to you? Chu Yang asked. They're naturally not as good as me, but it's also a pity, the bookworm said. I don't know about this, Chu Yang said lightly. Actually, I didn't say anything, and I didn't sow discord between you or anything. I believe you know everything in your heart, and there's no need to say anything. However, the person involved can't see clearly. Chu Yang nodded and smiled very easily. The bookworm nodded slowly and heavily, and his face was obscure. After this, the bookworm didn't speak anymore. He just drank one cup after another, frowning as if he was thinking about something. After a long while, he drank enough. The bookworm stood up and staggered away without even saying goodbye. When he reached the door, one foot was already out, but he suddenly stopped. With his back facing the bookworm, he said in a low voice, I'll find you someday. I'll look forward to your arrival at any time. Chu Yang looked at the bookworm's figure gradually disappearing into the crowd in front of the restaurant, and his eyes were extraordinarily complicated. Chu Yang even hoped that his conjecture was completely wrong. If it was true, then the blow to the bookworm would be absolutely devastating. But Chu Yang believed that the bookworm could completely understand what he meant. And the sentence that the bookworm said, I'll find you someday. It was definitely not just empty words. Someday, tomorrow and the day after could also be someday. Chu Yang returned to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion with a belly full of thoughts. He even abandoned his original plan of visiting the Tang clan's third young master halfway. Even if he watched Meng Wuya, Li Guanyu and the others train their troops, his brows were furrowed. His brows were tightly knitted, but in reality, he didn't see anything. What's wrong with you? You look lost, Xi Xiecheng asked. Sister Xi was one of the few people who could ask unusually straightforward questions. I'm just a little troubled. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Today, I met someone by accident. Then I realized. Even if one's cultivation has reached the level of a high-level saint, or even higher, as long as someone wants to deal with you, it's not that difficult, Xi Xiecheng said in surprise. This is how the world is. What's so strange about this? Is it worth making such a fuss over? Chu Yang heaved a long sigh. At first, Chu Yang thought that the bookworm would come to find him tomorrow or the day after, but he didn't expect him to come so soon. Just in the evening, the bookworm came to the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He named Chu Yang and said that he wanted to see him. Although he couldn't use force at the moment, he didn't hold back the extraordinary temperament of a born king and a master at the peak. Seeing that the visitor was extraordinary, the guard naturally reported it immediately. Chu Yang hurried out to welcome him. Under the request of the bookworm, the two went to Chu Yang's study and immediately shielded all auras. There were only the two of them. The Heavenly Book divine technique that I practice has its own mystery and is very useful to Yuan Tianjie. The bookworm went straight to the point. Within the range of the Heavenly Book domain that I release, if Yuan Tianjie opens his mind and evolves his technique, he can easily break through the bottleneck in the Heavenly Book domain. Chu Yang nodded. In the territory of the Seven Stars Guards, I'm the only one who can help Yuan Tianjie practice without any scruples. The bookworm took a breath. How great is the specific effect? Chu Yang asked cautiously. It will be his own ordinary practice. The bookworm took a deep breath. More than 5 times? This temptation is too great. Chu Yang sighed deeply. 5 times the speed of practice. What a powerful reason this was. For anyone, this was more than enough. It was enough to do anything for this. The muscles on the bookworm's face twitched inexplicably. He said, Then, is it true or not? Chu Yang was silent. He said, This, I don't have the final say. You need to check it out yourself. Feel it with your heart. The bookworm clenched his fists. It's a pity that I'm seriously injured now. Even if I want to go back to Mayan Sky, I can't do it. Chu Yang was silent for a while. He said in a low voice, I can help to solve your injury. Even if I can't let you recover completely immediately, it's not a problem for you to recover half of it. But I have some other worries. Other worries? What are you worried about? The bookworm asked, puzzled. I'm worried that if you go back this time, I'm afraid you'll die in Mayan Sky. Chu Yang said bluntly. The cold this time completely disrupted my plan. I originally wanted to write more manuscripts these days and save them until the end of the year. Then I'll immediately go for tenosynovitis surgery and rest during the spring festival. I can also use this reason to refuse to drink. I'll go light after the spring festival. Sigh, the plan can't keep up with the changes. At such a critical moment, I actually caught a cold and my whole body became like noodles. The 2 manuscripts that I saved with great difficulty were used up just like that. I hate colds. Chapter 2254. Shu Kuang nodded slowly. I won't die. I won't go back now. Even if I go back, I'll go back openly. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Good. I'll help you. The world was really unpredictable. Just a day ago, they were in absolute opposition to each other. Now they were united. Bookmaniac was so strange and ruthless. Of course, it was reasonable for him to stay in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. The whole process was really strange. In fact, when he expressed his willingness to accept Chu Yang's suggestion to stay in Heavenly Armament Pavilion, even he himself felt that it was hilarious. His original intention was to kill him. Up until yesterday, this goal had not changed. Just because he had a drink with him and listened to his strange and inexplicable arguments, he had a clear stance. Now, he was living in his house and had to rely on him to treat his injuries. Such a chance encounter in life was really bizarre. There was really no way to explain it. By the way, the other 2 people who came with you wouldn't just leave you here, would they? They will still come back, right? Under normal circumstances, they will definitely come back. But this time, it's not certain. At that time, we were in an absolute disadvantage. If we couldn't lure the enemy away, I would have definitely died. As for the other 2, sigh, I can only hope that they will be blessed by the heavens. Elder, I suddenly realize that you may be the kind of person who is least likely to get injured, but has the weakest ability to survive. Just as you have guessed, my Heavenly Book divine technique has a great effect and can be said to be all-encompassing. It can almost eliminate the attack power of most of the techniques in the world. However, it is also because of this that if the enemy's attack power exceeds my limit, I will immediately be seriously injured. This is the biggest flaw of my divine technique. There is no such thing as a perfect divine technique in the world. If there is an advantage, There must be a disadvantage, and vice versa. Chu Yang nodded and said, Elder, you're quite insightful. What you're practicing is the heavenly book divine technique. As the name suggests, it's obvious that although books are good things that can enlighten one's mind, increase one's wisdom, and even pass down one's legacy, books are really all-encompassing. Books themselves may not be able to last forever. All principles, legacies, and matters are presented, concealed, and evolved in the book. However, it is precisely because it is all-encompassing and can affect almost everything that it leads to its lack of focus. It is very difficult to reach the true pinnacle level. Most importantly, it lacks the decisive attack power to determine victory. Chu Yang said indifferently. However, it's precisely because anything can be found in books that this special technique of yours, the higher the level of cultivation, the greater the assistance it will provide to others. No wonder there are people who covet it. Even Heavenly Emperor Mo Yun, Yuan Tianji, requested for you to accompany him in his cultivation. Because, regardless of whether it's traces of the great Tao or the heavenly Tao, they can all be found in there. Chu Yang chuckled softly and said, If that's the case, even if we have to sacrifice 18 peak experts in exchange for your wholehearted support, we can still complete this transaction. The cost is certainly not small, but the profit is even greater. The muscles on Crazy Book's face instantly twitched. He gasped for breath and suddenly laughed. I didn't know that I was worth so much. I didn't know that I was worth so much until today. Ha ha ha, the more profound the meaning of a technique is, the harder it is to cultivate it. For example, Senior's Heavenly Book Divine Technique. If you can really cultivate it to the extreme, then it's all-encompassing. It's not an exaggeration to say that it's omnipotent. Chu Yang raised his eyes and said, Now you should be stuck at this bottleneck, right? Yes. Crazy Book sighed. All these years, I've been disheartened. The progress of my cultivation is indeed not big. Chu Yang smiled faintly and said, Moreover, because you have to wholeheartedly assist Yuan Tianji in his cultivation, this process probably requires you to give your all without reservation. This is also one of the reasons why you haven't made any progress. It may even be the biggest reason. It's understandable to repay a debt of gratitude. A drop of water should be repaid with a gushing spring, let alone such a big debt of gratitude. Crazy Book laughed self-mockingly. Ha ha. His laughter had an indescribable sadness and bitterness, which almost broke one's heart. Chu Yang was silent for a moment. Then, he said, What realm has Yuan Tianji reached now? Crazy Book sighed deeply and said, At present, he has already broken through the shackles of the ultimate saint. If it was 1,000,000 years ago, his cultivation was far from Shui Leihan's. He was even one of the few people who ranked behind after D. But now, his cultivation is probably not inferior to Shui Leihan, who is now recognized as the number one after D. In fact, he might even surpass him. Chu Yang made a sound of agreement and nodded. But in his heart, he had a deeper understanding and evaluation of Yuan Tianji's strength. Yuan Tianji was already so powerful, but he had always been so low-key after D. The impression that he gave people was always that he was one of the last few. If they were to encounter him rashly, Shui Leihan might really be at a disadvantage. If it wasn't for the fact that Chu Yang killed his son this time, which made him unable to tolerate it, and sent out troops to suppress Chu Yang in anger, which led to him sending out Crazy Book in the end. And Crazy Book was unexpectedly persuaded by Chu Yang. He might still be kept in the dark about this matter. Why has Yuan Tianji been hiding his strength all this time? Chu Yang frowned and asked. He is already the master of a part of the world. Why would a supreme figure of the heavenly imperial court hide his strength like this? Crazy Book's expression changed, but he didn't say anything. Chu Yang continued to guess to himself. Could it be that he is pretending to be weak to his enemy? But who is his enemy? Crazy Book's expression became more and more ugly. He wanted to say something but stopped. In the end, he swallowed his words. At this moment, Chu Yang also stopped this somewhat awkward topic. Changing to another topic, he said, If Senior Book King can achieve great success in the Heavenly Book Divine Technique, then, I believe that without anyone's guidance, with the all-encompassing Heavenly Book Divine Technique, finding out the mastermind and the real culprit, should be very confident. Shu Kuang smiled bitterly and said, "How could I not know this? However, the fact that my Heavenly Book Divine skill could reach this level is already unprecedented. It's the first of its kind. Because of this, after reaching the bottleneck of this level, there's naturally no more reference for me to use. Everything has to depend on myself. Since then, I have been disheartened and have no more motivation to go further. Also, in order to return Yuan Tianji's favor, I have to do my best to assist him." "I see. It's human nature. But if your state of mind is always like this, even if you find the real culprit in the future, do you still need Yuan Tianji's help?" Chu Yang smiled meaningfully and said, "What's more, how can you be sure that the 18 people you killed are the real culprits who tried to kill you back then? You said that at the beginning of the battle, you were seriously injured and your consciousness was in a mess because of the joint attack of a group of people. What evidence do you have to confirm that the 18 people you killed are the real culprits who killed your wife and concubines back then? Also, so far you've only killed 18 murderers. Where's the leader? He's the real executioner. Yuan Tianji is so resourceful. Since he can find the first 18 people, why can't he find the last one?" Chu Yang's eyes were as sharp as a knife. "To put it bluntly, are the 18 people you killed really the same group who attacked you back then? Yuan Tianji said those 18 people are the culprits, and you believed him and never doubted him? Have your enemies really been killed by you?" Chu Zhang said. "Perhaps, among the 18 people who died, 1 or 2 of them who were killed by you at the beginning was indeed the real culprits. I mean, if my conjecture is true, but the people in the future may not be the real culprits. Or even none of them may be the real culprits. After all, high-level saints are also very rare. If we can use this to weaken the strength of the enemy's experts, wouldn't we be helping others and ourselves?" Chu Zhang said heavily, "I think you should understand what I mean." Senior Crazy Book. Crazy Book was sweating profusely when he heard this. He had always thought so and had never doubted it. Just as Chu Zhang said, Yuan Tianji helped him find the culprits. At the beginning, he had questioned the few people in detail. There was also one person whom he tortured to death and confirmed to be the real culprits of that day. But when he killed people later on, it was half based on the confessions given by those people and half with Yuan Tianji's help. After he found the culprits, he killed them indiscriminately and without leaving any leeway. Killing people without leaving any leeway was certainly satisfying, but on the other hand, it also lacked the true intention of cutting off all enmity. Even if Yuan Tianjie was a suspect, if Yuan Tianjie was prepared to sacrifice the lives of these 18 people, even if that was the case, Yuan Tianjie would still spare a few people and let the others, or those who disobeyed Yuan Tianjie, be the scapegoats. Anyway, they had already been killed. The dead tell no tales. Now that he thought about it, the more powerful the real culprits were, the more powerful they were. Some of them were even super experts of their own world. Even though he had put in a lot of effort to set them up, it also took a lot of manpower and material resources to succeed. Every time he thought of this, he would be more grateful to Yuan Tianji. But was it Yuan Tianji who helped him take revenge, or was he just listening to one side and working for others? The Heavenly Book Divine Technique is all-encompassing. It probably includes the way of hatred, right? Chu Zhang said lightly. I heard that if one's cultivation reaches a high level, he can go back in time. Speaking of this, Chu Yang's eyes looked up. Opposite him, Crazy Book was shocked. Chapter 2255. Using your own powerful thoughts to lock onto something. Let this matter replay all the causes and effects in front of you in an instant, Chu Zhang said lightly. I can't guarantee that the Heavenly Book Divine Technique doesn't have its own special ability, but I think that you should make the final decision on everything by yourself. You should see the result with your own eyes. This is better. Perhaps this is the only way to be worthy of yourself and worthy of Shu Kuang was silent for a long time and said, "Thank you for your advice." Chu Yang's words undoubtedly had a great impact on Shu Kuang. It was so great that Shu Kuang himself couldn't understand it. Shu Kuang asked himself honestly. Everything that happened in his life had traces of being manipulated by someone, including being ambushed, escaping, and then taking revenge. Even until now, he still had a bad feeling of being led by the nose. Since when did his life become like this? Shu Kuang kept thinking and thinking. Finally, he couldn't help but ask this question modestly. Chu Yang thought for a long time and said after some deliberation, "I don't know if it's right or not, but I have such a feeling." "What feeling? Tell me in detail," Shu Kuang asked anxiously. "When you first started cultivating the Heavenly Book Divine Technique, did you advance quickly at the beginning? Far faster than ordinary cultivators?" Chu Yang asked. "Yes." "At that time, did you feel that you had no distractions? Did you only want to advance by leaps and bounds? Could it be that after advancing all the way to a very high level, he suddenly stopped advancing? And then you started to get a wife?" "Yes." "But what's the problem?" Shu Kuang asked curiously. "What's the problem?" "It's a big problem." Chu Yang smiled and said, "This is one of the disadvantages of reading too much." Shu Kuang said seriously, "I'd like to hear the details." "Of course, I'm not saying that reading too much is necessarily a bad thing. I'm just saying that reading too much will make you read too much. Because the principles in books are often contradictory to each other. For example, a person's behavior may be recognized in one book, but it will be criticized in another book. All kinds of thoughts will gather together to guide you unconsciously. So, your thoughts will often deviate from one another at any time. It's hard to determine. Your behavior is better than mine. There was a saying that went, those who uphold justice are mostly dog butchers, while those who betray justice are mostly scholars. Why? Chu Jiang said somewhat mockingly. Dog butchers don't read much. Their thoughts are one-track minded. If you are good to me, I will naturally be good to you. If you can kill for me, I will sell my life for you. It's that simple and pure. This is the truest and most fundamental feeling, the most direct spirit of loyalty. Although countless people scolded me for being blindly loyal, I have to admit that this kind of loyalty is quite touching. You can deny it, but you can't deny it. And why do we say that scholars are heartless? Why are scholars so heartless? Actually, in my opinion, the so-called scholars are heartless is somewhat arbitrary. Because after reading a lot of books, one naturally knows how to weigh gains and losses. Everything should be weighed, but weighing is also the most terrible thing to do. Because once there is a comparison, then there is only one reason to move forward, while there are thousands of reasons to move backward. If a person saves your life, you owe him a life-saving grace, and one day this person is framed and killed. Shouldn't you take revenge for him? And will you take revenge for him? Perhaps your first reaction would be to take revenge for him. This is something you should do as a human being. But after carefully weighing it, you will feel that taking revenge for him will cause you to face a lot of trouble, and you will even lose yourself. And you still have children and grandchildren, so you can't die. And you still have beautiful wives and concubines, so you can't die. And you still have parents, so you can't die. And you still have a great future, so you really can't die. If I use a more dignified way of saying it, it's that a wise man won't do it. With all these choices, a wise man often dispels your thoughts of taking revenge for your benefactor. So you start to think of another way. I can't take revenge for him like this. It's not beneficial to him, and it's harmful to me. I can choose to take revenge in other ways. For example, I'm an official, and I happen to be in charge of this area. I can do this and that. For example, I can take good care of his parents, wife, and children, and not let them be wrong. Is that it? Leave a useful body, and do endless things. Shu Kuang said in a perplexed manner. If you say it like this, it makes some sense. Taking a roundabout way of repaying a debt of gratitude is still repaying a debt of gratitude. Acting rashly for a moment can really cause a greater tragedy. Chu Yang smiled faintly. That's why I said that your character is easily swayed by others. What I want to tell you is that as long as you walk on the path of ingratitude, you'll be an ingrate for the rest of your life. When you become an official and come to this area, you'll naturally want to redress your grievances. But if you find out that the family you want to target is very important to the political achievements of your area, and they're extremely powerful, they have people above them, and they're extremely fawning over you. Even if it's a very difficult matter, as long as you have the help of this family, you'll be able to get it done very quickly. Once you kill him, it'll be the same as. In any case, that good friend of yours has already been dead for more than a dozen years. He doesn't have any memories. At this time, what will you do? When your friend just died, you're so angry that you can't even take revenge for him. After the passage of time, can you still act rashly for a moment? The most frightening thing is to weigh the gains and losses like this, and forget your original intention. After weighing and weighing, all the beautiful feelings in the world will be completely destroyed, and not a single drop will be left. So, it's not a bad thing to read too much. But as long as the books are reasonable, they'll be affected. That's a bad thing. And you happen to be at this stage. At the beginning, you don't know how difficult the heavenly book divine technique is. You just keep your head down and focus on cultivation. Naturally, you'll be able to advance bravely and make rapid progress. But after reaching a certain point, you'll realize that the road ahead is really too wide. It's really too all-encompassing. This will instead give birth to fear and slack in your heart. This is the biggest obstacle for your cultivation to stagnate. Zhang said coldly. Those who are righteous are mostly dog butchers, while those who are unfaithful are mostly scholars. King of books, you're now a heartless person. Your wife and concubine were killed. You also want to take revenge, but you didn't follow your original intention. Instead, you went to investigate and find out the real murderer. You just killed whoever others say it was. Do you think that you'll be done after killing the murderer? If I say that everyone in the world is your enemy, will you also kill them all? What does this blind revenge have to do with your hatred for your wife and concubine? It's fine if you kill the right person. If you killed the wrong person, you'll be committing another sin for them in the underworld. Shu Quan was sweating profusely. His stable state of mind at the level of a high-level saint collapsed at this moment. As the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's recruitment activities became more and more vigorous, more and more experts from all over the Demon Emperor Heaven gathered. And this phenomenon lasted for more than 2 months before it slowly decreased. With so many people gathering, the venue naturally needed to be big enough. Slowly, the surrounding 3,000 miles around Luohua City became the territory of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. This 3,000 miles of land was called the Land of Heavenly Punishment by later generations. Because there were lightning and thunder almost every day, and almost every day, there were people who broke through their own limits. Ever since the Heavenly Devil War, there had never been a place like this in the entire Heaven Imperial Court. Of course, the intensity of the training here was enough to make one wish they were dead when they thought about it. It was a nightmare of the past. There was once a veteran who, after the war on the Heavenly Devil battlefield, was asked about the day he received training in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. He couldn't help but tremble with fear on his face. He said, "I'd rather continue to fight on the extraterritorial devil battlefield for 10,000 years, than go back to that damned place to stay for one more day. What's the Heavenly Devil Demon Territory? That damned place is the real demon territory." So, this sentence was extended and became a famous saying. 10,000 years of extraterritorial devil-slaying war is not as good as 1 day of Minister Yang's training. When this sentence came out, all the soldiers who had trained in the Heavenly Armament Pavilion burst into tears. It's really too damn. My heart. It said what I wanted to say the most but dared not say the most. It's so satisfying. How can the days of training under Minister Chu be spent as a human? If it wasn't for the sudden outbreak of the devil-slaying war, everyone would almost think that this sadistic man was simply torturing people. Of course, this was a story for another time. And Mo Qingwu, who had achieved great success in her cultivation, came all the way south. The scenery was beautiful, but she was eager to go home. At the same time, it was winter in the Heaven Imperial Court, and it was snowing heavily. Tens of thousands of miles were white, and the rivers and mountains were all shining with silver light. And Mo Qingwu, dressed in red, flashed across the snow-white land. Like a red cloud, she floated away. Her beautiful hair was like a waterfall. The red cloud's steel bow on the top of her head spread its wings. On her snow-white jade-like face, there was a slight blush that did not disperse. It was the throbbing of the impending meeting. Her slim figure was graceful and charming. Her slim waist was wrapped in a red belt, as if it could be grasped with one hand. The peerless beauty went all the way south. Naturally, there were many untactful people along the way who blocked her way. Some were smiling mischievously, some were robbing, and some were using all kinds of underhanded methods. And Mo Qingwu came all the way with a smile, and left all the way with a smile. For those who didn't do anything for themselves, she lightly punished them. If she didn't do anything for herself, she would be done with it. If she met those who pestered her or used some despicable underhanded methods, then there was nothing to say. She directly drew her saber. Dreaming of a gentle dance, saber appeared in the world again. When the saber was drawn, the starlight shone and danced lightly. But immediately, many people turned into remnant souls under the saber. Along the way, she had already crossed the Fog River. Chapter 2256. I heard that this place is only 7 days away from Luohua City where Chuyang is. With my speed, as long as I put in a little more effort, I should be able to get there in 3 days. And Mo Qingwu heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. The end of this road was near. At this moment, she suddenly heard a loud noise in the sky. Then, she saw 2 rainbows flash violently, and then disappeared in the sky. It's really strange. It's already winter. And it's still snowing heavily. How can a rainbow appear here? And Mo Qingwu wrinkled her elegant brows. She was puzzled as she muttered to herself. Although her current cultivation was very high, she still didn't understand the higher level of cultivation of the St. Peak. After her cultivation improved that day, she couldn't wait to travel the Jianghu. Naturally, she had never heard of it. Although she had doubts in her heart, hurrying on was more important now. So she hurried on. After walking for hundreds of miles, she unexpectedly heard a faint groan coming from the side of the forest. Is someone injured? And Mo Qingwu hesitated and thought. In this cold weather, the injured person is too pitiful. And Mo Qingwu was kind by nature. Thinking of this, she turned and followed the sound. Entering the dense forest, she saw a human head poking out from under the snow with difficulty. Suddenly, a dark human head emerged from the pure white snowy ground. And Mo Qingwu was startled at once. No matter how high her cultivation was, Mo Qingwu was still a girl in the prime of her life. Unexpectedly seeing such a situation, how could she not be shocked? Taking a closer look, this person's head seemed to still be attached to his body. However, he was forcing himself to crawl out. After crawling out halfway, he couldn't crawl any further. His 2 hands were about to stiffen. If no one came to save him, he would probably die completely. And Mo Qingwu patted her chest and murmured, I was scared to death. I thought it was a ghost. It turned out to be half human and half ghost. This person was now in such a state. How was he different from half human and half ghost? However, if Mo Qingwu didn't help, the remaining half of the person would soon become the other half of the ghost. And Mo Qingwu cautiously walked over and patted that person's cheek, saying, I say, are you okay? That person had already fainted, but after being slapped on the face, his instincts kicked in and he immediately woke up. He opened his eyes, and a sharp gaze shot out. It was actually mixed with endless dignity. He said in a low voice, You dared to slap my face? Along with these words, an awe-inspiring and inviolable aura surged out. However, what was completely inconsistent with his imposing manner was, right after he finished speaking, his head tilted to the side, and he fainted once more. That imposing aura instantly vanished into thin air. And Mo Qingwu was startled when she saw this. It wasn't because of that imposing aura, but because she was puzzled. This guy was already so miserable, yet he didn't care about his own life, but his face. You're about to die, so what's wrong with me patting your face to save you? Besides, it wasn't like I was hitting you. I was trying to wake you up. And Mo Qingwu was a little unhappy with this stranger's rudeness. She frowned and looked at him for a moment, but then she realized that this guy's hands and feet were cold, and he could die at any time. Finally, she was moved. With a wave of her hand, the frozen soil on the ground exploded with a bang. This person's body slid out of the soil, but his body still didn't have the strength to support itself, and instantly collapsed onto the snowy ground. He didn't move. And Mo Qingwu first reached out to feel the main artery on his neck. After confirming that he was still alive, she then reached out to check his pulse. After checking his pulse for a while, she couldn't help but stick out her tongue. To be able to live with such injuries, as far as I know, only Ray Butong can do it. It seems that even Chu Yang can't do it. His meridians were all destroyed, his dantian was shattered, and his internal organs were all cracked. They could develop into pieces at any time. Although he was in such a state, there was still a mysterious and powerful force in his body that barely protected his heart and meridians, preserving his vitality, and not causing his soul to dissipate. This was simply a miracle of life. Or it could be said that this was the benefit of a high-level cultivator. Unless there was an extremely high-level cultivator himself, it was impossible to still be alive in such a situation. It's a pity that the heavy pills that Chu Yang gave me have all been used up. There's no immediate treatment method. I can only use ordinary methods now, and I don't know how to treat him. And Mo Qingwu hesitated for a moment, and finally took out a small jade bottle from her bosom. She opened the bottle, and there were 3 snow-white pills inside, exuding a rich fragrance. She reached out and pinched this person's mouth, but she couldn't pinch it open. What else was there to say? Naturally, she slapped him again. Smack! It was still the manual effect that was more obvious and immediate. This person, who was almost dead for 10 minutes, actually opened his eyes again. His hair stood on end, and he said furiously, You hit my face again. And Mo Qingwu only waited for him to open his mouth before she poured the 3 pills into it. Crisp. Just as he finished speaking, his eyes rolled back, and he fainted again. What a weirdo! And Mo Qingwu sighed. He doesn't even care about his life, and only cares about his face. Could this be the legendary dead face? He's a bit like that guy Tan Tan. The 3 pills that Mo Qingwu gave him were very unusual. They were the unique panacea of the dreamlike veranda, the Red Dust Heaven Reversal Pill. The Red Dust Heaven Reversal Pill was the #1 life-saving medicine in the dreamlike veranda. Although the effect of this pill was still far from being comparable to Chu Yang's heavy pills, it was still one of the top few panacea in this Heaven Imperial Court. Even an ordinary high-level saint might not be able to have panacea of this level. And Mo Qingwu used 3 pills at once. She was really generous. And because she used 3 pills at once, this person's condition immediately improved. His breath was obviously stronger than before. Although he was still in a coma, his life was definitely saved. And Mo Qingwu stood up and frowned. When I left the mountain this time, I asked for 2 bottles of this Heaven Reversal Pill. Now 1 bottle is gone. Originally, I thought that I would be able to see Chu Yang immediately, and I didn't need any Heaven Reversal Pill, so it wasn't worth it. Now, if there's another one like this, both bottles will be gone. Besides, saving this person's life is a good thing, but this place is in the middle of nowhere. This person is lying here. If I don't take care of him properly, I'm afraid he might die in a while. But how can I take him away in this situation? And Mo Qingwu bit her finger and thought for a long time. She was a big girl. Whether she carried him or carried him, it was not appropriate. Although this guy looked quite old, it was still not okay. He was a man after all. After thinking for a long time, she clapped her hands. Got it. Mo Qingwu chopped off a few branches with a few schwa 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 sounds. Then, she casually arranged them, and quickly made a sleigh. Then, she used her hand to make a buckle. Then, she broke off a big branch with a kacha sound, and stuck the branch in the buckle. Then, she used her hand to pull the other end of the big branch, and dragged it for 2 steps. It was actually very smooth in this snowy environment. This idea is not bad. And Mo Qingwu took out a blanket from her space ring, and laid it out. She put the person on it, and covered him with a thin blanket. She murmured, "I only brought 2 sets of blankets with me. I've already given you one. You'll have to bear with it if it's cold. Don't freeze to death. When we reach a place where there are many people, I'll get a carriage to pull you, and you'll be comfortable." After she finished speaking, she pulled with her hand. Immediately, snow and dust flew behind her. A graceful figure in red pulled the snow sled all the way, rolling forward just like that. A delicate figure pulling a snow sled. This scene was strange no matter how one looked at it. It seemed very strange. What was even stranger was that this super simple and crude snow sled made of a few branches, which looked like it would fall apart at the slightest touch, was actually moving forward so fast on the snowy ground. If someone saw this, their eyeballs and jaws would probably fall to the ground together. And Mo Qingwu kept moving forward. After walking for only a few dozen miles, she suddenly stopped and said with great annoyance, "Really, the good things don't come true, but the bad things do. Why is there another one here?" Sure enough, on the side of the road, there was a man in black lying on his back, motionless. After a long time, she saw a little bit of white smoke coming out of his mouth and nose. This proved that he was still alive. And Mo Qingwu looked at him in distress. "Sigh, I've already saved one before. What's the harm in saving one more?" She moved forward to take a look. This person was also seriously injured and was on the verge of death. She reached out to take his pulse. The extent of this person's injuries was actually about the same as the person just now. All his meridians were destroyed, his dantian was broken, his spirit was damaged, and his internal organs were all cracked. He looked like he would die at any time. In addition, he also used a strong force to protect the last bit of vitality in his heart meridians, maintaining his vitality. "Why does this seem like you're deliberately torturing my crisis reversal pill? God, you're not playing with me, right?" And Mo Qingwu said sadly. She didn't say anything. She followed the same pattern and pinched the person's jaw, preparing to pour the medicine. What was depressing was that this person also didn't open his mouth and didn't cooperate. And Mo Qingwu frowned. Thinking of the previous method, she waved her hand and slapped him. Slap! The sound of the slap was loud and clear. This person suddenly woke up, his eyes as round as bells. You actually dared to hit my face!" After saying that, he tilted his head and fainted again. And Mo Qingwu had already successfully poured the medicine into his mouth for the second time. Chapter 2257. Thus, the small sleigh started to expand and became a big sleigh. 2 people were lying side by side at the back. These 2 people were sleeping peacefully for the time being. And Mo Qingwu was pulling them forward like a coolie, as fast as lightning. If Mo Qingwu knew the real identity of the 2 people she was pulling, she would probably be shocked. These 2 people, one was Demon Emperor Heaven's 7-star bodyguard. The other was Mo Yuntian's 7-star bodyguard. The earth-shattering explosion just now was caused by these 2 people risking everything to collide head-on in the air. That was why the 2 of them had suffered so much that they had almost lost their lives. If they didn't coincidentally meet Mo Qingwu, these 2 people would have a high chance of dying together. That person from Demon Emperor Heaven fell from the sky without worry. Anyway, he had many people on his side, the others should be able to find him very quickly. He had left behind a trace of his primordial spirit to protect his body, so he wouldn't die. As long as he didn't die, any serious injuries wouldn't be a problem. And Mo Yuntian was more miserable. Because he suffered such serious injuries, he still had to worry about the enemy's pursuit. After the collision, he used his last bit of strength to burrow into the soil, intending to hide himself. But because he really didn't have the strength to maintain it, he almost suffocated to death under the soil. He forced himself to crawl out again. Just as he crawled out, even his last bit of strength was used up. He was about to become a living dead person who buried himself alive. At the last moment, he was saved by Mo Qingwu. And now, this pair of mortal enemies were placed shoulder to shoulder by Mo Qingwu on the same sleigh, covered in the same blanket, sleeping peacefully. If such a harmonious scene was seen by people who were familiar with the identity of these two people, there was a high chance that they would spit out a mouthful of blood and die from shock. Of course, the rescuer, Mo Qingwu, definitely didn't know about this. She only focused on running forward, with only one thought in her mind: to see Chu Yang as soon as possible. Half an hour after Mo Qingwu rescued that person, a long rainbow came through the sky. A person flew around several times, and searched everywhere. Then, he scratched his head in bewilderment. "It's clearly here, why isn't it here? What's going on?" He used his divine sense to probe, but there was no trace at all. He couldn't help but be puzzled. What's going on? How could a living person go missing? On this day, the three of them arrived at the lone bamboo city. Mo Qingwu hurriedly hired a large sleigh carriage, and carried the two of them up. She lowered the curtain of the carriage, and hired someone to drive the carriage in front. She also sat in the carriage. She could finally relax for a while. Although pulling the sleigh did not consume much energy, it really damaged her image. Women always cared about their image. The interior of the carriage was very spacious. But Mo Qingwu had placed the two old men in a relatively narrow space. The two of them were very close to each other. Most of the remaining space was occupied by Mo Qingwu. She was lying down comfortably, and reading a book. The book she was reading was the recently published unofficial history of Jianghu, Chu Yang vs. Mo Yuntian. This book is full of exaggerations. There are all kinds of exaggerations, all kinds of smearing Mo Yuntian, all kinds of praises for Chu Yang. Almost 1 out of 10 sentences was not bad at all. And it was all exaggerated. But Mo Qingwu liked it the most when other people praised Chu Yang. Even if she knew that it was exaggerated, and the truth was basically impossible, she still read it with great interest. In this book, Chu Yang's experience could truly be described as a life and death situation. How strange, unimaginable, and whimsical! It was more than 10 times more wonderful and complicated than Chu Yang's own experience. The only thing that made Mo Qingwu dissatisfied was, the Chu Yang described in this book is too flirtatious. He actually did it with Yuan Tianji's wife. This is too insulting to my Chu Yang. Even if Chu Yang doesn't mind, I do. Slap. Mo Qingwu angrily closed the book, and puffed up her cheeks. You slapped my face again. Suddenly, the two of them shouted together. Their voices were full of grievance and anger. But it was this slap sound that actually made the two of them wake up like a conditioned reflex. Subconsciously, they thought that they had been slapped again. Mo Qingwu's forehead was full of black lines as she looked at the two mummy-like old men. Why are you two joining in the fun? Don't you know that I'm in a bad mood? But even if I'm in a bad mood, I can't vent my anger on these two people. Although their condition improved, their breathing was still weak, and they could barely breathe. Their eyes were open, but they couldn't move their limbs. They couldn't even move their necks. But the two of them were facing each other at this moment, face to face. When they opened their eyes, they were shocked to see that their life's greatest enemy was right in front of them. They could even feel the other party's hot breath. They couldn't help but scream, as if they had seen a ghost. It's you! It's you! It's actually you! It's actually you! You! Why are you here? You! Why are you here? Just like that, the two of them, who had never been on the same journey, spoke almost at the same time. Mo Qingwu sighed quietly. These two must be twins. Look at how sensitive their hearts are. My ears have been opened today. But at this moment, the two of them didn't say anything else. Just like that, they looked at each other in dismay. Their 4 eyes were wide open in anger, as if they were about to split apart. They stared at each other fiercely, as if they wanted to kill each other with their fierce eyes. But other than that, they didn't do anything else. It seemed like they couldn't do anything, and they didn't have the strength to do it. Originally, they had another choice, which was to faint. But now that their greatest enemy was right beside them, and both of them couldn't move. If they were to faint first, wouldn't it mean that they had lost? I'm not as good as him. That's impossible. Little girl, it's you who saved me? The 7-star guard from Emoutian was the first to break the stalemate, and asked hoarsely. Humph, Emo Qingwu said. If it's not me, is there anyone else here? The guard from Demon Emperor Heaven also sighed and said, Little girl, it's you who saved me? Emo Qingwu exploded. Can you let me answer your question only once? Both of you asking the same question, isn't it childish? Although you two are twins, you can't be like this. Are you showing off to me that you two have great chemistry? The little girl was really aggrieved. When the 2 old men heard that, they were instantly stunned. Then, they shouted at the same time. Who's his twin? Another 2 sentences came out at the same time. And they were actually exactly the same. Oh my God, you still dare to say that you two aren't twins? I believe that even real twins wouldn't be as compatible as you two. Stop fooling around, you two. I'm a little regretful now that I saved you two. Why was I so kind? Emo Qingwu held her forehead in pain. The 2 of them stared at each other for a good while, and realized that they couldn't do anything in the end. They couldn't even change their positions. Suddenly, they asked at the same time. Can you change my position? Let me not face this bastard. As soon as one person spoke, the other person repeated his words as if he was repeating himself. Coincidence? This was really a coincidence. What a terrifying coincidence. Emo Qingwu was instantly enraged when she heard that. She scolded. Tell me, what's going on with the 2 of you? Both of you are also experienced in the martial world, right? You're not young anymore, right? You've lived for so long, so you should have some experience in the martial world, right? You should know how to face your savior, right? You don't even know how to say the most basic words of thanks. You only know how to order people around. Is this how the martial world works? You're really not embarrassed, right? When the 2 old men heard that, they were dumbfounded. They opened their mouths and stared at each other. For a moment, they were stunned by the scolding. Want to get angry? Get angry for what? The little girl was right. She didn't do anything wrong. But if they didn't get angry, why did they feel so uncomfortable in their hearts? No wonder you're so old, but you haven't been able to make a name for yourself in the martial world. Instead, you've fallen into such a pitiful state. You don't know what the martial world is. You don't know what the rules of the martial world are. Emo Qingwu scolded angrily. She said angrily, I don't care what the relationship between the 2 of you is. Now shut up. If you don't want to look at each other, then just close your eyes. Where did all these problems come from? You don't want to see? Right now, I'm the one in charge here. When young Miss Emo lost her temper, she was awe-inspiring. She intimidated everyone in the carriage. Then, she picked up the book that she had thrown away and read it with great interest. What happened to the rest of the plot? For a moment, the 2 old men were speechless. At this moment, they actually felt a subtle emotion of we're both in the same boat. This life, this demon life, is really wonderful. When did a person like this old man get scolded by a little girl like this? Moreover, it's such a little girl. Although the other party's words were very subtle, how could the 2 old men not understand the meaning behind it? That was, you've lived for a generation and roamed the martial world for a generation. Don't tell me you've wasted it all? Moreover, no wonder you're so old, but you haven't been able to make a name for yourself in the martial world. This sentence really made people's faces twitch to the point of cramping. The 2 of us were king figures in the past. We commanded the world and moved unhindered in the universe. With a stretch of our hands, we could collapse mountains and seas. With a stomp of our feet, we could shatter the heavens and the earth. Now, in our old age, we've been reduced to insensible, good-for-nothings. Oh, this little girl is really. What the little girl said is reasonable. You old thing, you've wasted all your years living like a dog. You've dragged me down. The 7 stars protector of Yao Huatian said disdainfully. He couldn't move his body, but he could still attack with his mouth. Chapter 2258. Don't tell me you're living as a wolf? Mo Yutian's guard scoffed. We're both being scolded at the same time, and you're still so smug. You said I'm dragging you down, and I'm the one saying you're dragging me down. No matter what, being old is still better than being like you. Yao Huangtian's guard did not budge an inch, and said disdainfully, An old trash like you actually dares to roam the martial world. You dare to say I'm old? How young are you? The two of them engaged in a war of words, cursing each other endlessly, and started to argue again. Of course, they really had a tacit understanding, and strictly abided by the premise of not saying each other's names. If this little girl knew who they were, and went out to spread it a little, then their reputation would be sent to the dog's kennel. But in the end, both of them were full of anger, and the more they talked, the angrier they became. Yao Huangtian was the first to make a move. With a pace sound, he spat a mouthful of saliva onto the face of the Mo Yuntian's guard who was closer than him. Instantly, the saliva became sticky and sticky. That demon guard laughed proudly. Mo Yuntian's guard was startled at first, and then he flew into a rage. Naturally, he was not to be outdone, and spat back. The two of them were less than half a foot away from each other, and neither of them could move. Naturally, there was no room for them to dodge. Therefore, every mouthful of saliva landed squarely on the other's face. The two of them took turns to spit at each other, and it didn't take long for them to cover each other's face with saliva. Mo Qingwu, who was watching this battle of the century from the side, looked up to the sky and sighed. She did not know what kind of madness she had gone through, or what kind of evil she was, or what kind of good person she was. She saved these two fellows, and they were actually old and shameless good-for-nothings. You're already so old, and you're still spitting at each other. Can you be any more despicable? Even if you don't care about your identity, have you never thought that beside you is a great beauty who loves cleanliness the most? And she's the benefactor who saved your lives. She was really speechless. Sure enough, there are all kinds of strange things in this world. Today was an eye-opener. Mo Qingwu wrinkled her nose and helped the two of them clean up after they had fainted from exhaustion. She wiped their faces and so on. She thought to herself, should I hire another maid? All in all, the carriage and sleigh carried the 3 top masters of the world. They rushed through the wind and snow all the way to Luohua City. Demon Imperial Palace. The Demon Empress stood under a flowering tree in front of the main hall. She gazed at the vigorous snowball in front of her and asked softly, How are Chu Yang and Ning doing? It's already on the right track, and it's progressing very smoothly. During this period of time, the beautiful woman in white had never left the Demon Empress' side. Very good. The Demon Empress' eyes turned cold as she said, Since everything is going well, let's start the Heaven Salvation Plan. Open the meteorite prison! Big sister, I'm afraid you'll have to think twice about this. Perhaps we have a better choice. The white-clothed beautiful woman stammered. She really didn't think that the Demon Empress' grand plan would work. Once it started, there would be no turning back. No need, I've already made up my mind. The Demon Empress waved her hand with a resolute expression. The meteorite prison, that's the meteorite prison! The white-clothed beautiful woman muttered to herself. The meteorite prison! It was the #1 prison in the Demon Emperor Heaven. Unless the heavens fell, this prison would never be opened. All the prisoners locked up here were extremely vicious and evil people. Since the Demon Empress became the Demon Emperor, she had made some changes to the meteorite prison. Then, it had remained so until now. No matter how powerful the countless prisoners were, no matter how profound their cultivation was, they would have to spend the rest of their lives in there, never to see the light of day again. How many prisoners were locked up, and there was also a mystery in the Demon Emperor heaven. In addition, who was locked up in the meteorite prison had always been a mystery. However, there was a vicious curse that had been passed down in the martial world. It was a curse that the great thieves or bandits of the underworld cursed. "I hope you'll be locked up in the meteorite prison soon." As long as this sentence was spoken, it would mean that both sides would not rest until one of them was dead. The meaning behind this sentence was obvious, and could be imagined. "I've already executed a batch of prisoners in the meteorite prison in the past few years." The Demon Empress narrowed her eyes and said calmly, "There's no point in keeping those inhumane people alive. I've already killed them all. Those who were able to stay were all people with a conscience. Of course, they are still vicious and merciless to outsiders. However, they still care about their own families and inheritances. Among these people, there are about 70,000 people who are qualified to be of use. In other words, these people are all experts, first-rate experts." The Demon Empress paused and her phoenix eyes turned cold. "The descendants of these people are still safe in this world. It's good for us to have something to worry about," the Demon Empress said calmly. "Let's go!" Amidst the screams, tens of thousands of thin white threads appeared in the Demon Empress' hand and disappeared in a flash. Below, in the meteorite prison, all the prisoners had a wisp of their soul extracted by the Demon Empress. "I'll give you 3 days," the Demon Empress said calmly. "Go back and see your families and descendants. Then I need you to come back and do something for me." Below, all the prisoners in the meteorite prison stared at the Demon Empress in disbelief. For a moment, they didn't know how to react. Never in their wildest dreams did they think that they'd be able to leave the legendary meteorite prison one day after entering it. Moreover, they could see their long-lost family members. To think that such a rare thing could happen. Ignoring the bone-piercing pain of having their souls extracted, they all knelt down and thanked the Demon Empress. Then, under the Demon Empress' cold gaze, they all turned into streaks of black light and disappeared from the meteorite prison. Of course they had to come back. That wisp of soul was in the Demon Empress' hand. If they dared not come back, the Demon Empress could destroy their souls with a single thought. 3 days, they only had 3 days to be reunited. 3 days of incomparably precious time. 3 days later, all the prisoners in the meteorite prison gathered in front of the Demon Empress. Everyone's eyes were filled with a heavy sense of gratitude. He was grateful because his family and grandchildren did not suffer any unfair treatment because of him. Everything was of no benefit to the commoners. As long as they didn't do anything wrong, the Demon Emperor's sky government would still protect them. They were grateful because the mission that the Demon Empress was going to give them would definitely be extraordinary. These prisoners were all smart people. How could they not understand the crux of the matter? "I need you to do something for me. This is something bad." The Demon Empress paced around with a cold face. She slowly organized her thoughts and deliberated her words. "From now on, you are no longer yourselves. You are no longer demons, and you are no longer humans. You are extraterrestrial demons. I want you to go to any place you can. Burn, kill, pillage, and commit all kinds of crimes. The outcome of this trip has already been decided. You will not return. You will be destroyed in the end. It's just a matter of time." The Demon Empress' phoenix eyes flashed coldly. "But I want you to do it as openly as possible. Then, you have to be more secretive. You might be able to last longer. You will commit more sins, and you will be more hated by the heavens. Do you understand what I've said?" Among the tens of thousands of prisoners, most of them were already enlightened. As mentioned before, they were all smart people. They instantly understood the Demon Empress' intentions and good intentions. "May I ask, Demon Empress, are you going to officially declare war on the extraterrestrial demons?" someone asked excitedly. "Although we were unpardonable evildoers back then, as long as we are declaring war on the extraterrestrial demons, we will not be stingy with our blood, even if it means death." The Demon Empress took a deep breath. "That's right. What I want you to do is related to this. So, no matter who catches you in the future, you can die. But you must not die in the way of the demon race. You must commit suicide in the way of the extraterrestrial demons. No matter how you are tortured, no matter how you are forced to confess, you must not reveal your real names and faces. You are the extraterrestrial demons. From head to toe, you are the extraterrestrial demons from the inside out. The Demon Empress said solemnly. If we can succeed in the war with the extraterrestrial demons in the future, the Heaven Imperial Court will obtain eternal peace and happiness. As long as the Demon Emperor's heaven is still here, I and my descendants will ensure that your descendants will enjoy peace and happiness for generations to come. And your real names will be engraved on the Demon Emperor's Heaven Heroic Monument, and will be admired for generations to come. At that time, you can figure out what to do by yourselves. You are all used to doing bad things in the past. I don't think you need me to teach you this. The Demon Empress said solemnly. But I will only emphasize one point. As long as anyone leaks out the truth, even if it's just a little bit, then all the families of the 77,000 people here will be annihilated. There will be no exceptions. Use your lives to arouse the hatred of the people of the Heaven Imperial Court towards the extraterrestrial demons. Start the war for the extraterrestrial demons. Give your descendants glory for generations to come. The Demon Empress finished her speech. The tens of thousands of people on the ground were silent. Everyone's eyes were sparkling. That night, black shadows floated out of the meteorite prison like clouds and mist. They quickly scattered in all directions. In the silent place, the meteorite prison that used to hold a huge number of people had become an empty city. Sister, they have all left. The beautiful woman in white looked worriedly at the Demon Empress, who was standing in front of the window with her hands behind her back. The Demon Empress did not turn around. She just said quietly, "Left? Good. Will there be any problems?" The beautiful woman in white was full of worry. Chapter 2259. The Demon Empress said coldly, "It doesn't matter. We're all experienced people. They know better than us what to do. Actually, it's a good thing for them to do whatever they want again in their lifetime. Especially when the bad things they're doing now can lead to good results and bring endless light to their descendants. To be honest, if I were them, I'd do the same. This is also a great opportunity for them to wash away the stain on their names. Actually, people are all the same. No matter if they're good or evil, there's always a lot of people who are willing to work together in the face of external aggression." The Demon Empress said softly. "Those who forget their ancestors and collude with the extraterrestrial demons are only a minority." "Yes," the beautiful woman in white agreed. "Those who are righteous are mostly dog butchers. Those who are unfaithful are mostly scholars." The Demon Empress muttered these two sentences. Her eyes flashed coldly, and she said, "Ask the Intelligence Department to pay more attention to those pedantic scholars in the Demon Emperor Heaven. Don't think that they're wrong just because they learned a few words from humans. Once they're discovered, eliminate them immediately." "Yes. This is a battle of life and death for the entire Heaven Imperial Court. We can't be soft-hearted." "Yes. After you're done with this, go to Luohua City too. Go and look after Ningning. And that Chu Yam, keep in touch with me at all times," the Demon Empress said quietly. "What about you?" The beautiful woman in white sensed something. "Me? I'm going to Purple Cloud Heaven later." The Demon Empress raised her head. There was an indescribable meaning in her eyes, and she said, "I'm going to Eastern Royal Heaven again. Besides, I'm going to Extreme Heaven to see Saint June." "See Saint June? Why are you looking at him?" The beautiful woman in white frowned. "I just want to see if Saint June is, as I suspect." The Demon Empress' eyes revealed an indescribable murderous aura. This murderous aura rose to the sky and drowned the Demon Emperor Palace in an instant. Billions of demons knelt down at the same time. The Demon Emperor's power shook the heavens and the earth. Chu Yang didn't know that the Demon Empress had also said the same thing not long after he said, "Those who are loyal are mostly butchers and those who are unfaithful are mostly scholars." Moreover, because of this sentence, he had taken precautions. That was why coincidences were sometimes really scary. This sentence was indeed somewhat biased, but in this critical period, it was better to be careful. Chu Yang was now standing on the drill ground, looking down at the smoke and dust that filled the air as the extreme training was in full swing. With one hand on his cheek, he was thinking about something. What other method could be more effective than this method to squeeze out the maximum potential of the human body in the shortest amount of time? Was there any other training method that was even crueler? Seeing how these kids could still make a big fuss, and how imposing they were, it seemed like they were enjoying it. How could that be? Chu Yang pondered hard, but he still couldn't figure it out. He was even considering if he should change the bed they slept on every night to a bed made of nails. The nail tips are all on top of that kind of thing. Then every night I have to check if they have entered a deep sleep. As long as they didn't enter a deep sleep, he would hit them mercilessly. Chu Yang racked his brains and thought about it at all costs. Of course, if the members of Heavenly Armament Pavilion who were training below knew what the minister was thinking at this moment, they would probably go crazy. You let people sleep on nails, and you still want to check if they are in a deep sleep? Was he studying the training method? He was clearly thinking about how to take people's lives. This handsome young man with a worried face and a jade-like face was clearly so elegant, but he was thinking of so many inhumane methods of torturing people. Could it be that he was the legendary gigolo with bad intentions? The ancients didn't lie to me. The old saying was still quite reasonable. At this moment, from the north gate of Luohua City, a sleigh suddenly rushed in. Inside, a little girl dressed in red, as beautiful as a fairy, eagerly asked, "Excuse me, where is Heavenly Armament Pavilion?" Everyone who saw this little girl was fascinated by her peerless beauty. Soon, some warm-hearted people showed her the direction. There were also many young men who enthusiastically wanted to be her guide. They had some unknown thoughts and smiles on their faces. But after 2 sentences, "Miss, who are you looking for in Heavenly Armament Pavilion? There were a lot of people there recently. I'm afraid it's not easy to find him. I'm looking for my husband. He should be easier to find." Who did you say you were looking for? Your husband? You are married?" "Yes." Okay. What is your husband's name?" "His name is Chu Yang." "Hey! Didn't you want to be my guide? Why did you disappear before I finished talking? Where is he?" Since the 2 words Chu Yang came out, those young men who coveted Mo Ching Wu's beauty instantly ran away. As the saying goes, a person's name is like a tree's shadow. Don't joke around. That is Lien Mo Yun. He is a fierce man who dares to kill people whenever he wants. If he knew that I was actually thinking about his wife. Even if I were to court death, I wouldn't find such a brainless person. It's better to slip away quickly. If there is a misunderstanding, I may lose my life. While I'm at it, I'm also praying that that beautiful little lady won't remember my face. The big mole on my face isn't worth your attention, and I don't dare to let your husband remember it either, please." Chu Yang was still uncertain at this moment. He was unable to settle his disgust. Suddenly his heart moved inexplicably. Suddenly his face glowed. Even his heartbeat seemed to have quickened. He couldn't help but be stunned. What's wrong with me today? Why am I so excited? Why am I acting so strangely all of a sudden? Could it be that Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian were both sitting on the high platform? Xi Xieching was also standing at the edge of the high platform with her hands clasped behind her back. She was watching the training below. At this moment, they all sensed Chu Yang's strange situation and raised their heads to look at him. At this moment, a clear voice called out, "Chu Yang, where are you?" It came from the entrance of Heavenly Armament Pavilion. When Chu Yang heard this, he only felt a heavy shock in his heart. As if he was hit hard by happiness. His heart almost stopped beating. He hurriedly stood up. I'm here. Before he finished speaking, his whole person had already flown up. At the entrance of the courtyard, a red figure also flew up to the sky following the sound. She was graceful and her red clothes fluttered in the wind. She flew over with infinite affection. Even though she was in a hurry, her figure still streaked across the sky like a celestial being dancing in a mesmerizing way. Zixiecheng's eyes flashed. She muttered, "Tian Wu! It's that girl Mo Qing Wu! I didn't expect that this girl has already trained to such a level." Mo Qing Wu! Tai Butian and Wu Qianqian stood up at the same time. Their feelings were very complicated. The biggest and most invincible love rival in their lives, and also the most important sister, had finally arrived. Mo Qing Wu, who he hadn't seen for a long time, had come to Chu Yang's side again. Chu Yang only felt that his heart was boiling. For a moment, he was so excited that he was about to explode. The moment he heard this shout, he almost couldn't believe his ears. Qing Wu had actually arrived so early. In midair, he could already see the red figure that he had been longing for day and night, flying over. The butterfly knot on her head spread its wings. Her delicate little face was filled with the joy of reunion after a long separation. There was also a lot of suppressed longing that turned into unspeakable grievances. Her small red lips were slightly pursed, and her eyes were filled with sparkling tears. At the moment when she finally saw Chu Yang, many tears finally flowed out uncontrollably. And Mo Qing Wu, with infinite longing and attachment, flew across hundreds of feet of space as if she was flying and threw herself into Chu Yang's arms. At this moment, she, who had always been reserved and polite, didn't even consider that her actions were being watched by thousands and tens of thousands of people. She just flew over without a care like that. At the moment when she felt that long-awaited warm embrace, Mo Qing Wu had a kind of blissful feeling as if the dust in her heart had suddenly settled down. "I'm home." This was her first feeling. Then, the longing turned into grievances, and all of them burst out like a mountain torrent. Chu Yang tightly hugged the delicate body of the beauty he hadn't seen in a long time. It seemed as if he was afraid that the beauty in front of him would suddenly disappear. Chu Yang was so happy that his heart almost exploded. He almost unconsciously muttered, "Qing Wu, Qing Wu." Mo Qing Wu slowly raised her head. That little face was already tear-stained, but there were tears in her smile. In her smile, she couldn't help but want to cry. She bit her lips to prevent herself from crying out loud. She looked at Chu Yang in a daze and said, "You still haven't changed at all. It's so good, you too, it's so good." Chu Yang smiled. Using all his strength, he hugged this delicate body tightly in his arms, as if he wanted to rub the beauty in front of him into his body, never to be separated again. The two of them hugged each other tightly in the air, their bodies sticking close to each other, as they slowly rotated. One in a black robe and the other in a red robe, under the reflection of the heavy snow, they actually formed an exceptionally harmonious and beautiful scene. Behind them, Meng Wuya shouted loudly, "What are you looking at? You don't even have a little bit of composure. All of you, go back and do more training. Today's training will be doubled." Li Guanyu stroked his beard and looked with a smile. He shook his head and said, "Talented and beautiful, a match made in heaven. I'm really envious of others." Someone next to him laughed and said, "Chrysanthemum Knife Wang family has so many wives and concubines, yet you still envy others. Do we still want to live?" Li Guanyu laughed and said, "I'm a pervert, this is my nature. How can you be the same?" Suddenly, his face changed and he said, "All of you stop looking. Just now, we stopped for a little while, and we were about to be overtaken by other teams. Today's training will be tripled." Chapter 2260. The Lightning Snake Trio each led a large group of machete men, torturing themselves and their subordinates to death. As long as they could still move, they had to continue training. From the distant mountains, earth-shattering howls could be heard from time to time. That was the last competition, the final battle to determine the king of assassins, the final battle. The spirit of calamity showed its skills in there. Qin Wu, Tai Badian, Wu Qianqian and Zixiecheng were all familiar with Mo Qing Wu. When the two immoral people finally landed on the ground and vented their excitement a little, they immediately called out, breaking this extremely ambiguous stalemate. And Mo Qingwu raised her head from Chu Yang's arms and suddenly shouted, "Ah! Why are there so many people here?" Just now, there was only one person in her sight, so she naturally didn't pay much attention to other people. Now that her spiritual sense had returned and her divine sense had been reactivated, she naturally noticed everything. Unfortunately, it was too late. When she thought of how her ambiguous behavior was actually seen by so many people, she instantly blushed. She hid her head in Chu Yang's arms and kept twisting her waist and stomping her feet coquettishly, never raising her head again. This was the so-called deceiving oneself to steal a belle. Chu Yang, however, burst into laughter. Yet, a strange feeling arose in his heart. Ever since Mo Qingwu started having that strange dream until she regained the memories of her previous life, it was as if she had two personalities. On one hand, it was the sentimental Mo Qingwu of her previous life, but on the other hand, it was the lively and witty little girl of this life. That kind of complicated yet distinct strange feeling sometimes made Chu Yang a little stunned. But today, when they met, that feeling was completely gone. It was as if there was only one Mo Qingwu in front of him. There was only the Mo Qingwu of this life. There was only that innocent, intelligent and beautiful little girl. Chu Yang instantly understood, Mo Qingwu had already solved her own inner demons. She could face, understand and accept everything now, and embrace everything with the true meaning of love. He couldn't help but feel extremely gratified, yet he couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. The Mo Qingwu of the past who was faintly angry and sorrowful, singing and dancing was ultimately a past tense. What he had now was the complete and original Mo Qingwu of her heart. What else was there for him to be dissatisfied with? People should be content with what they have, and those who are content will always be happy. Chu Yang asked about this matter when he was alone with Mo Qingwu. Mo Qingwu smiled and replied, "A dream is a dream after all. Why do we have to live in a dream? Isn't that good?" Thus Chu Yang understood. Although Mo Qingwu's memory still existed, and because of that memory, she had some skills that she had never come into contact with in this life. But she had finally succeeded in convincing herself that it was a dream, just a dream. You can revel in it, you can reminisce about it, but you won't take it too seriously. Because it was unreal. Because the only one who truly lived in this world right now was this Mo Qingwu. Chu Yang hugged Mo Qingwu and returned to the high platform with Tai Betian and the others. Then, Mo Qingwu was surrounded by the three women. "Qingwu, your progress in this period of time is too great. How can you have such a large increase? If I didn't see it with my own eyes, it's really hard to believe, hard to imagine." Zi Xieching looked at Mo Qingwu with some amazement. Chu Yang's progress had already shocked her, but she never expected Mo Qingwu to also have such progress. Although her progress was not as good as Chu Yang's, she had also reached the level of a saint. Compared to Chu Yang, she was only slightly inferior. Her real strength was almost on par with Zi Xieching's. This fact made Zi Xieching feel that she had lived in vain all these years. "I'm also a coincidence. Most likely it's because of a rare opportunity." Mo Qingwu was especially amiable when she saw Zi Xieching. "And the heavenly dance technique that Sister Zi gave me back then, I only realized after coming to the Heaven Imperial Court that that technique was practically tailor-made for me. It's not only easy to cultivate, but also the speed of my progress is simply incredible. Besides, the dreamlike secular pavilion poured all the best resources of the entire sect on me. It would be strange if my cultivation didn't progress quickly." There was one more sentence that she didn't say. Chu Yang also gave me great elixirs. The most important thing was of course the great elixirs combined into one, the terrifying driving force it produced. "Qingwu, your little body is also growing, really fast." Wu Qianqian looked at Mo Qingwu's curvy body with some envy. She was a little envious and jealous. Before they parted on the Heaven Imperial Court, Mo Qingwu's small body seemed to be just the tip of a small lotus. Her chest was at most a small steamed bun. Now, her figure was actually very good. Compared to Wu Qianqian and Tai Betian, she was already not inferior. This result made Wu Qianqian and Tai Badian feel a little unbalanced. They were so much older than this little girl and were in their golden years. Moreover, they were nourished by Chu Yang from time to time recently. But this little girl seemed to be only 18 years old, and she was already so big. If this continued, wouldn't it be terrible? We'll be too ashamed to show our faces. And Mo Qingwu smiled shyly and said, I don't know either. I've been growing crazily during this period. The two girls didn't know how to reply. Was this considered showing off? Chu Yang rubbed his hands at one side and drooled, looking like a pervert. His voice carried infinite reverie as he said, You can eat now, you can finally eat now. After so many years of waiting, finally, get lost. Zi Xieching, and Mo Qingwu, Tai Batian and Wu Qianqian jointly kicked. 4 small feet kicked Minister Chu's buttocks at the same time. Minister Chu's hands and feet were flailing about as he was sent flying. He screamed in an exaggerated manner. Seeing this, the 4 girls laughed heartily at the same time. And Mo Qingwu suddenly thought of something. Oh right, I saved 2 people on the way here. Their situation is very bad, they are about to die. I even left them at the door. I forgot everything just now. Everyone was sweating profusely. Aren't you forgetting a little too much? When the 2 injured people were carried in, everyone was speechless. 2 thin old men. Under normal circumstances, they should be very sage-like. But now, each of them had a face full of saliva. They were still glaring fiercely at each other. How pathetic! Black lines appeared on Mo Qingwu's forehead once again. I was kind enough to save the 2 of them. But I didn't expect that the 2 of them would turn out to be enemies. So, they fought all the way? No, they didn't fight, they scolded. Chu Yang looked at the 2 people wrapped in a blanket and was dumbfounded. And you still wrap these 2 enemies in a blanket and let them walk for thousands of miles, face to face? Too talented. And Mo Qingwu blushed. The carriage I prepared only has so much space. I have to save myself first. No matter what, I'm still a girl. Who would have thought that the 2 of them would have such a big temper? Everyone was speechless at the same time. They agreed with Chu Yang's words too much. Too talented. Chu Yang, hurry and save them. The 2 of them are about to die. If they really die, it would be a waste of my intention to save them, Mo Qingwu said. When they heard the 2 words, Chu Yang, the 2 people who were already at the end of their rope and could die at any time suddenly widened their eyes and stared at Chu Yang in a daze. Especially Mo Yuntian's guard, his heart was even more tangled. The biggest target of this trip was actually here. And, from the looks of it, it was actually him who wanted to save him? Oh my God! How should he settle this muddled debt when the time comes? Don't worry, as long as they're here with me and still have a breath, they definitely won't die. Even the king of hell won't dare to snatch them from me. Chu Yang smiled faintly. He reached out to take their pulse and checked. He couldn't help but be shocked. And Mo Qingwu didn't know much about medicine. She didn't really know the severity of these 2 people's injuries. She also didn't know what kind of cultivation was needed to maintain their lives under such injuries. But Chu Yang's experience was so rich that he could tell with just one move. These 2 people, each one of them was an expert at the pinnacle level, a top expert. Just based on cultivation alone, Zi Xieching and Meng Huia together wouldn't be a match for any one of them. With such injuries, even if it were him, he would probably die a long time ago. In the world, there was only one person who could still struggle at death's door and not die under such injuries. According to Chu Yang's knowledge, of all the people he met now, only Xu Kuang alone. And now, there were actually 2 of them in front of him at the same time. Since when were there so many experts in the world? And Mo Qingwu actually picked up 2 of them so casually. Chu Yang reached into his pocket and took out the heavy pills. He was about to save them when suddenly, a thought came to his mind. Could these 2 people be the ones Mo Yuntian sent out to attack us this time? At this point, the heavy pills became an incomplete version of the heavy pills. Then, he pinched open 2 portions and dissolved them into the spring of life. He poured it down the 2 people's throats. Since his position wasn't clear, it was better to be safe. It was fine as long as they didn't die. But no matter what his position was, he still had to give each of them an incomplete version of the heavy pills. After all, it would be a pity if these two people's shocking cultivation were to be destroyed just like that. Even if he was suspected of helping the enemy, he still had to do his best. Just as Chu Yang was treating these two people, outside the Heavenly Armament Pavilion, in the Luohua city, someone was writing something on a piece of shiny jade. Chapter 2261. Today, a girl in red, named Qing Wu, came to Luohua City. I've been worried all day and night. The Heavenly Armament Pavilion is too powerful, and I'm afraid it won't be compatible with our pavilion. I hope Pavilion Master will be cautious. After he finished writing, he sighed and carefully placed 5 purple crystals on the table. He quickly adjusted the position of the purple crystals into the shape of a hand. He cut open his finger and dripped his blood into it. All the words on the purple crystals turned into smoke and rose into the air. They disappeared in the blink of an eye. The person in charge of the intelligence department had a worried look on his face. He was so worried that he could not hide it. He had obviously only been here for a few days, and he had been very careful in his actions, but he had still been targeted by this subordinate of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. Now, he was being restricted in every way. It could be said that it was difficult for him to move. He could only wait for news from the headquarters and see what he should do next. After a short while, the crystal shone, and a line of words appeared on it. The person in charge was shocked and dumbfounded. This Heavenly Armament Pavilion is our headquarters. In other words, our Heavenly Armament Pavilion is just one of the branches of the headquarters. We are responsible for intelligence. Minister Chu Zhang is the real leader of the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. If you are here, you can contact him as soon as possible and tell him your background and information. You will gain his trust. In addition, you have full authority to listen to Minister Chu's orders. Keep in touch with me at all times. If there is a conflict between our orders, Chu Yang's orders will prevail. Orders must be obeyed. Just this short line of words made the person's brain fill with blood. He almost crashed. How can it be like this? They surrendered just like that? The person was scared out of his wits. How can it be like this? Is boss's brain damaged? Our Heavenly Armament Pavilion is so big. How can it be just a branch? Save me! Although he said that, even if he had 10 more guts, he would not dare to doubt boss's wisdom. Moreover, the words on it were clearly written by Pavilion Master Mo Tianji himself. The person only hesitated for a moment. Seeing that there was no more news coming from the purple crystals, he finally got up and walked out of the door. His destination was the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. The Pavilion Master had made it very clear that the most important thing was to quickly contact the headquarters and reach a consensus. He was the first person to contact the headquarters and could be considered a key person to witness this historic moment. After each of them took half a heavy danpu, the 2 experts simultaneously revealed an extremely astonished expression. The heavy pill was filled with miraculous medicinal power and miraculous vitality. Almost in an instant, the 2 of them who were already pacing back and forth outside the King of Hell's palace were pulled back. The effect was immediate and incomparably miraculous. The 2 of them were saints after all. Under the nourishment of such a miraculous medicinal effect, their vitality immediately had an opportunity to circulate again. The tyrannical regenerative ability of the saints responded immediately. In just a moment, the almost shattered dantian started to recover. There were signs of it stabilizing again. Even the wounds on the 5 internal organs were healed immediately. In just a few breaths of time, the 2 of them suddenly realized. Hey! They can actually move! Not only could they move their heads, even their legs seemed to have regained strength. They tried to struggle and the blanket on their bodies was instantly kicked away. Then, the 2 of them exerted their strength and stood up. Although they were still a little unsteady, to be able to recover to this extent, it was no longer difficult for them to recover further. Of course, the two of them did not know that this was because Chu Yang had some reservations and did not dare to use the full amount of heavy pills on them. If he used the full version of the heavy pills, with their cultivation, even if they could not recover completely, they would at least be able to recover 10 to 20% of their cultivation. Don't underestimate 10% of their cultivation. To the two of them, if they really recovered 10% of their cultivation, they would not be far from recovering completely. At most, it would only take a few days. The self-recovery ability of a saint-level expert was still very strong. However, even if it was an incomplete version of the heavy pills, and the fact that the two of them shared one, it was still a rare opportunity. Through this matter, Chu Yang also discovered another fact. His understanding of the heavy pills in the past was actually a fundamental misunderstanding. In the past, when Chu Yang used the heavy pills, he mostly used it to treat internal and external injuries, to recover his own fighting strength, or to use its powerful medicinal effects to promote his own cultivation and raise his realm. However, as his strength continued to increase, the heavy pills at various stages could no longer satisfy those needs. Especially when it came to increasing his cultivation and instantly recovering his physical strength and fighting strength, although the effects were still there, they were relatively weak. However, today, Chu Yang unexpectedly discovered that the most powerful way to use the heavy pills was to restore one's life and restore the body's functions. It really had the effect of snatching one's life from the hands of the king of hell. Experts who had the cultivation of saint level and above would not be easily injured when facing opponents of the same level. Even if they were injured, they would be able to recover quickly. This was originally a characteristic of the self-recovery ability of high-level martial artists. However, as long as they were seriously injured, especially when their physical body was seriously injured and their vital energy was exhausted, they could only wait for death. Although there was no lack of elixirs in the Heaven Imperial Court, there were almost no elixirs that could restore the body's functions to the extreme. Even if there were exceptions, the quantity was extremely limited. Moreover, the people who had them would only cherish them. Not to mention giving them out, they would not even show them to others easily. At best, only the top few people had them. For example, the two high-level sages and book maniac that Mo Qingwu had saved. Although the three of them were extremely powerful, they did not have that kind of elixir. In fact, they were even inferior to Mo Qingwu. Miss Mo still had 2 bottles of mortal dust reversal pills with her. And the heavy pills were the best elixirs to treat this condition. As long as the patient was still breathing, as long as there was a heavy pill, even if it was an incomplete version, coupled with the spring of life, it could save the patient's life. As long as the vital energy was not depleted, with the recovery ability of high-level martial artists, it was not difficult for them to recover in a short time. This was also the effect of the incomplete version of the heavy pill. To the 2 high-level sages, it should only be a drop in the bucket. However, because it was right at the crux of the problem, the effect was so immediate. The 2 of them understood this point, and also understood the preciousness of the elixirs that Chu Yang gave them. They stood up and thanked Chu Yang at the same time. With a life-saving grace in front of them, even if there were thousands of hatred, they had to repay the kindness first before they could take revenge. The 2 of them still understood this rule of the martial world. Of course, the only one who needed to think about how to repay the kindness first before taking revenge was Mo Yintian's 7-star guard. "You're welcome." Chu Yang smiled. In the end, it was the 2 seniors who had solid foundations. "I just gave you a little push in passing." The 2 of them were even more grateful. Then, they looked at each other and glared at each other. "Just you wait, we'll settle the score with you sooner or later." Chu Yang laughed and asked, "May I know the names of the 2 seniors?" "I'm the Painting King." Mo Yuntian's guard was a little embarrassed. He said, "My surname is Chiu Yuan Shan. I'm the Wings King." Demon Emperor Heaven's guards smiled. Demon Emperor Heaven's King of Birds. Their life's greatest enemy was right in front of them. It was impossible to hide their identity. If they forced it, they would only become the laughing stock of others. They might as well just say their names. The 2 of them thought so in their hearts. So it's the arrival of two king seniors. Chu Yang's face didn't change, but he thought, I didn't guess wrongly. In order to avoid embarrassment, Chu Yang didn't ask further about the background of these two people. Otherwise, Demon Emperor Heaven's Guard would be fine, but Mo Yintian's guard would inevitably say, My original intention of coming here is to kill you, and kill your whole family. Then it wouldn't be too embarrassing. What senior? Wings King snorted and laughed. Little, this guy is Mo Yintian's man. He came here especially to kill you. But this time you saved his life. Humph. I'd like to see how this old guy still has the face to do it. Painting King's face turned red and he said angrily, You don't have to bully me like this. So what if my mission was originally like this? But how can I repay his kindness with enmity after receiving his life? At most, I'll just go back like this. In the future, this matter will have nothing to do with me anymore. There will be a time to repay the kindness of saving my life in the future. Is there really a time to repay? I think you're just going to watch your savior get killed by your brothers? Pretend to be deaf and dumb? Such a person's death is like an extinguished lamp. Without someone to repay your kindness to, it will naturally save you a lot of trouble. Is that what you think? Wings King said sarcastically. The people of Mo Yutian are indeed all ungrateful people. Painting King flew into a rage. What kind of bullshit are you spouting? I've been upright all my life. How can I have such dirty thoughts? My grudges are my grudges. The grudges of the Heavenly Emperor are the grudges of the Heavenly Emperor. I withdrew because of my personal grudges, but how can I affect the decision of the Heavenly Emperor? You still say that you don't have dirty thoughts. Didn't you say that saving you was a waste of effort in the end? Did I say something wrong? Who's the one spouting bullshit? Wings King said coldly. Seeing that the two of them were getting angrier and angrier as they quarreled and were about to fight again, Chu Yang and the others hurriedly tried to persuade them. But they didn't know what the two of them were thinking. No matter who tried to persuade them, it was useless. The atmosphere was getting more and more intense, and the battle was about to break out. At this moment, Shut up! Both of you, behave yourselves! Mo Qingwu shouted angrily, and her voice shook the whole place. With just this voice, the two old men shrunk their necks at the same time and immediately stopped. Like two quails, they didn't dare to raise their heads to speak. Along the way, these two old men were called over by this little grandaunt. It had almost become a conditioned reflex, and they subconsciously followed the little grandaunt's words. It had already become a habit. Chapter 2262. Chu Yan looked at the Painting King of Mo Yuntian and said, Senior Painting King, your status is different. Today, it's just a small matter, you don't have to take it to heart. Once you leave here, you will be an enemy and not a friend in the future. As the saying goes, don't give in on the spot and don't show mercy. Fight each other, life and death will be up to fate. The Painting King's face was full of shame as he said in a deep voice, Since I have received such a great favor, how could I still have the face to oppose you, little friend? I will naturally withdraw from this operation. Before I have repaid little friend's great favor, I will absolutely not harm anyone by your side. As for the others, little friend, please be careful. Speaking of which, his current position was also very awkward. His original intention was to kill Chu Yang, but he didn't expect to be fatally injured before he even saw him. When they finally met, it was the other party who saved his life. His position in this matter was really too awkward. Now, the other party's proposal was reasonable and he couldn't find a reason to refuse. If he refused forcefully, it would be even more pretentious, so he could only thicken his skin and agree. But to say how difficult it was going against his conscience. If he went out like this, he was unfamiliar with the place and enemies everywhere. Maybe he would be torn apart by the strong forces of the demon realm in an instant. It would be fine if he died in the hands of a super expert, but if he died in the hands of some small fry, then he would really die in grievance. But if they stayed, it would be tantamount to receiving Chu Yang's protection. The painting King Qiu Yuan Shan only felt tangled in his stomach. How did he fall into such a strange circle? Forget it, there's no need to worry about paying when there are so many debts. I'll slowly calculate it. Chu Yang arranged for 2 people to go in and treat their injuries. Watching the 2 of them walk in while glaring at each other, he couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Before he could say anything to Mo Qingwu and the others, he saw someone come in and report. Minister, someone is here to see you. He claims to be from the Heavenly Armament Pavilion's Tianji Intelligence Department. He will only explain in detail when he sees you personally. Tianji? Intelligence? Let him in quickly. Chu Yang was overjoyed. He instantly understood the origin of the person. Tianji Intelligence Department under the Heavenly Armament Pavilion. This name, and the person who contacted him personally, then other than Mo Tianji's people, no one else could think of. Mo Qingwu's eyes also lit up when she heard this. She was so surprised that she let out a cry of surprise. The person that Mo Qingwu cared about the most was naturally Chu Yang. But the second most important person was undoubtedly her elder brother, Mo Tianji. She had seen Chu Yang in one day, and had also received information about her elder brother. So, how could she not be ecstatic? Greetings, Minister. The person in charge of the Heavenly Secrets Hall's branch walked in, and did not regard himself as an outsider. He knelt down on one knee and bowed respectfully. Is your leader Mo Tianji? Chu Yang asked. It is indeed the Pavilion of Heavenly Secrets. How can you prove your identity? I have the Heavenly Secret Messenger hand personally made by Clan Leader Mo as a witness. Moreover, Clan Leader Mo once instructed me to say 4 words to Minister Chu if I see him, Master of the World. Not bad indeed. Chu Yang felt relieved. Controlling the world was Mo Tianji's unique skill, and it was also because of this that Mo Tianji and Mo Qingwu were separated, almost causing Mo Qingwu's regret. Mo Tianji had been brooding over this matter until now. Other than Chu Yang, even the rest of the people who robbed him were completely unaware of this matter. With this as evidence, it was naturally hard to fake. Chu Yang instantly felt relieved. After a conversation with the person who came, Chu Yang was even more overjoyed. Mo Tianji's intelligence network had actually extended so far in such a short period of time. The overall scope of coverage had actually extended to more than half of the Heaven Imperial Court. Such rapid development in such a short period of time was practically a miracle that was hard to come by. After Chu Yang finished listening, he quickly pondered in his heart. With the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department's momentum, how should it be promoted and developed in the Demon Emperor Heaven? And how should he make use of this peerless weapon, the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department? In the Heaven Imperial Court, the wind was blowing and the clouds were surging, each with its own style and brilliance. Gu Duxing's escape finally came to an end after he escaped to the extreme once again, and raised his cultivation from a place where it was absolutely impossible. The chaotic heaven sword technique was finally completed. And as Gu Duxing advanced all the way, he himself finally joined the ranks of the top experts in the world. From then on, whoever wanted to deal with Gu Duxing would have to consider and weigh whether they had the ability to deal with him, whether they should deal with him, whether it was worth it to deal with him. Afterwards, whether they would be able to bear Gu Duxing's revenge. Recently, after a few famous super experts and legendary figures died or were defeated by Gu Duxing's sword in succession, the pursuit incident this time finally came to an end with such a strong start, but a weak finish. Gu Duxing, who had completed his cultivation, returned to his old lair in an ostentatious manner and started a new round of recruitment. His followers actually gathered together. With the connections that Gu Duxing had built along the way, he actually gathered a group of super experts as his team in an extremely short period of time and swept through the Heaven Imperial Court, laughing proudly in all directions. Gu Duxing's Heavenly Armament Pavilion was like a rolling snowball that grew bigger and bigger, expanding rapidly. In the end, it was already unstoppable, and Mo Tian, who had lost Gu Duxing, the target of his plan, felt very disappointed. He had lost both the person and the money. However, on the other side, he finally contacted Chu Yan directly, which also made Mo Tianji's mood rise again. Especially after knowing that Gu Duxing and Chu Yan had already achieved great things, Mo Tianji stepped up the next step of his plan. The target this time was Rui Batong, who had also not been seen for a long time. Rui Batong, who was in another world, had already been promoted to the #1 bandit of this world. He was really famous and unparalleled for a time. Finally, on this day, in a certain city, a Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department suddenly appeared. When this Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department appeared, the first thing it did was to advertise, "There's no whereabouts that we can't collect. There's no information that we can't collect." With this as a gimmick, it immediately began to promote and expand. Therefore, a busybody said, "You guys are so awesome, who doesn't know how to talk? Give me some proof. There's a #1 bandit in this world, Rui Batong. Can you find out his whereabouts? If you can, I'll buy it no matter how much it costs. If you can't, you'd better close your doors early and find another way out." Naturally, the Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department was not to be outdone. 2 days later, they officially sold the news of the #1 bandit in this world. At this point, the legend of the #1 bandit whose whereabouts were unknown came to an end. For a moment, the whole world went crazy. Everyone knew that this #1 thief had gathered a lot of good stuff. He was a huge moving treasure trove in itself. As long as they could catch him, even if they had no enmity with him, they could turn from a pauper into a rich man overnight. This temptation, this reason, was enough no matter what. Therefore, everyone was enthusiastic and fought to be the first. The Heavenly Secrets Intelligence Department once again made a fortune. To deal with Rui Batong, Mo Tianji did not need to think about everything like he did with Gu Duxing. He only needed to force this guy to his death. No mercy. No mercy. Anyway, this guy had the great ability of a phoenix. Even if he was beaten to a pulp, he could come back to life. What was there to think about? Under Mo Tianji's wisdom, Rui Batong instantly fell into a terrible situation where every sound was an enemy. Rui Batong, who was originally leisurely cultivating, suddenly realized that his whereabouts had been magnified by 100,000 times. It was as if he was exposed to everyone in this world without any concealment. No matter how he disguised himself, how crafty he was, or how he fled, there would always be someone who would stop him at the first moment and hunt him down. Rui Batong instantly fell into a dark and gloomy life. He wanted to cry but had no tears. I. Which deity have I offended? Do you still want me to live? Save me! When the later generations talked about the hunting storm that swept through the heavenly imperial court this time, this was what they said. Unbeknownst to everyone, an invisible hand gradually overturned the world without a sound. No, it controlled the world. It controlled the world because the tentacles of this hand had already gradually penetrated into every industry and domain in the heavenly imperial court. Moreover, no matter what industry it was in, this hand was trying to set off unpredictable waves. Of course, in the normal business industry, the waves set off by this hand would at most earn a little more money and nothing more. But in the martial world, the waves set off by this hand would earn people's lives. Countless lives, under the deliberate fiddling of this huge hand, came one after another to hand over money to this huge hand, and died happily at the same time. This hand controlled everything in the dark, but when this hand was controlling everything, no one felt that this hand's existence was so terrifying. They even thought that the giant hand was being used by them, existing because of their existence. However, they didn't know that the real objects being fiddled with were actually themselves. Just like that, they were being silently influenced, controlled, and fiddled with. Furthermore, the giant hand was enjoying it, taking its place one after another. Almost everything was done according to this hand's plan. He had already controlled everything, but everything that was controlled didn't feel that they were being controlled. He held the universe in his hand and controlled the world. He saw through the mysteries of heaven and made divine plans. There was nothing that could go beyond his control. This hand was called the Hand of Heavenly Secrets. And the owner of this hand is the current Heavenly Emperor of Heavenly Secrets, Mo Tianji. The above paragraph was excerpted from a book written by a later generation. Those years, the hand that controlled the Heavenly Imperial Court. Remembering the Heavenly Emperor of Heavenly Secrets, Mo Tianji. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.